Hello, and welcome to Sutro Sidetalk, episode 140. I'm your host, Kamran Shushtar, and with me is...
James Seelig.
And today we have not one, but two guests. We have who was with us 2 weeks ago, Andreas.
How's it going, guys?
He was with us for the Book of Boba Fett in episode 138, and making her debut here, who is actually on Up to It, Down to It for our convention episode, is Momo, or Moira.
Yo, what up, what up?
And we are here today to talk about Demon Slayer's Entertainment District arc from the anime, as well as the manga for a bit too. No news this week, so we're just going to go right into the anime. But before we do, how is everyone doing?
Doing pretty good. Trying to have just a relaxing weekend. It's going pretty good so far. We saw Princess Mononoke again.
That was great.
At the
We
Alamo.
saw that at the Alamo. That was really fun.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I think that was my first Miyazaki movie in a theater. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Oh, really?
Did you never go to like Annamonde at the Balboa Theater or anything?
Nope.
Because they do that all the time.
That was just you and your brother, man. I never went to those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You guys are here, of course, like I said, Demon Slayer talk, and kind of like if you listen to our Book of Boba Fett episode and a little bit from our Uncharted talk last week, it's more timelined in terms of topics that we're going to go through, not just like, hey, how was the show? It was dope. All right, bye. Just so we have more structure and kind of going through it from piece by piece. I had it starting off with the very first episode that you notice, transitions out of the Mugen Train movie or the 7-episode Mugen Train arc, and how everyone feels about pretty much just that episode, as it was like a little bit longer, 45 minutes. But I think I got tricked when they first put it out, because everyone was talking about how there's an hour-long first episode, and I'm like, oh, no way. And I forgot that they probably also meant commercials or something, so it's only like 45 minutes. And I was kind of confused, and I thought I downloaded I got the wrong thing on Crunchyroll, and I'm just like, there's something wrong. There's like 15 minutes cut off. I guess there's some error or something. And then,
Whoops.
Yeah, it ended much faster than
Like...
But how did everyone feel about that episode?
It was pretty good. I like that after the insanity that is the ending of Mugen Train, from both an emotional level and an animation level, they like really build. They kind of set you up for the fact that this season is going to be about building to a crescendo, and that's the main thing that I really got out of it. It was seeing more of Muzan is always a treat. He's terrible and amazing, and that shot. The only thing I want to talk about from that episode, I could erase it all. That shot of Tanjiro going up the steps in the rain to the temple. Oh, it was just bliss. I was like, this like Kurosawa-esque like samurai motif just finally shown in this beautiful painterly glory. That I'm gonna make a poster of that on my wall. Better than this one. But yeah.
Pretty much when they're like done working out and they're like, all right, we have to go on our soul missions for a bit. Yeah, no, that was a good time.
I think it was needed. I think that breath, because with Rengoku, that was kind of the first major death, at least that we cared about. And it's definitely like a trap, right? Whether it's the Mugen Train movie versus the actual episodic arc, you feel for this person, and especially since the brother sibling relationship of the mentor of Rengoku with Tanjiro and everyone else. So I think having that episode, that transitional episode, that creates breathing room for us viewers of like, oh shit, yeah, this happened. This is the first major character that we really had attachment to. It dies. And again, Andreas, as you mentioned, it really kind of builds up more character development, and just as audiences realize, okay, it's going to get deeper from here, essentially.
Yeah. One thing I like about the series as a whole is just the ability to show like the progression of characters from like where they started and where they are currently and where they need to go. So like the entire first season, you're watching Tanjiro get slowly better and defeat slowly, like, more strong demons and stuff like that. And then you get to Mugen Train, the movie, and he's like kind of able to like go toe to toe with one of the lower level demons or lower numbered demons, and like with the help of a couple of other of his friends. and then like an upper level demon shows up and he just like wrecks them, and even wrecks one of the Hashira. And like, I mean, Rengoku did an amazing job, but he still, you know, succumbed at the end of the battle, and it was tragic and sad. But like, so that's why I like that this season started off with like, okay, we have to acknowledge that like we, as far as we've come, there's so much farther to go. We need to train our asses off.
Definitely.
It's a wake up call, 100%
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
And you notice like it kind of breaks up, I want to say, into like 3 portions. There's kind of like the Mugen Train aftermath. It's more of like, hey, Rengoku is state and everything else. There's the middle tier of like, hey, here's training. And then here's like what's coming up next, besides, I guess, also including, you know, Child Muzan, which was interesting because you're thinking like, oh, you know, Muzan's Michael Jackson. He's doing whatever the hell with his family that he's playing pretend with. I don't really know what the hell's going on with that. And then all of a sudden, I think it was the end of the, you know, first season. He's like, I'm a woman now, and you're in my insane castle that has much different animation than the rest of the show. And now you're like, I'm a child and I'm a prodigy, but I can't go out during the daytime, and I just kind of read books a lot. And I'm like, oh, this dude just kind of gets around, I guess. Like, you know, I know obviously you guys are probably like, oh, if only you knew, but I'm just like, at least from what we've seen so far, like I'm assuming he's just been around so long. He's like, I just, you know, want to experience stuff because I'm more curious, or just kind of playing around because I got nothing better to do anyway. So I'll just see how these different human lives can be, whether it's being a father, husband, being a castle woman, or being a child with a family or something
with
like
a
that.
rich family. That's
very
the important.
bougie.
That's the important part, is that all of his side hustles, he's in a place of power within the human world. So
that's a good point.
That's a nice thing that they keep emphasizing, is like he can't just be all out, because there's no room for that. His minions are the ones who do all those things. So it's kind of a nice little touch there.
For sure.
I do think it's interesting, and I wish there was more, I guess, backstory of like those kind of connections. Because if you think about it, just him with these different family dynamics he's creating, and I think it's really unique of, you know, he's the person that's like the most apathetic of like the whole situation, because he's the OG, right? He doesn't care about any of these people. They're all pawns to him. So I do definitely think it's very interesting of kind of psychoanalyzing each position he's put in, or he puts himself in. But it's still, again, it's still like a chessboard end of the day. So I do think that's very interesting.
Definitely. The Rengoku portion, probably, you know, I'm in the theater, I watch everything that happens. It's dark, so no one could see the waterworks, which is fantastic.
The tears.
And then I'm like, oh, well, cool, we're waiting for Entertainment District. I'll watch Mugen Train again as an arc. It's not going to happen again, right? Oh shit, my emotions are still exactly the same. And then I'm like, okay, I think we're finally done. And then we see his dad and brother, and I'm like, fuck, here we go again. Because they did such a good job of introducing Senjuro and kind of having him interact with Tanjiro. But with his father, you get like that whole, I guess, understanding of like, you know, he's a dad, but you don't really get why he's so pissed. You're just thinking, oh, his mom's dead, so that's why like the father is like this. But from what I've heard in terms of like I feel like Rengoku said something like, oh, there was some fight he was in or something, and it kind of changed him. And we saw a flashback for a second where it shows his father in like the Flame Hashira outfit, and he's like over someone's bed, and I guess it's like someone's corpse. But I'm assuming that was one of the main reasons why, like, you know, he's pissed off and everything else. And I'm very curious, like, what more we're going to learn. Because I could tell, like, you know, each arc kind of feels like, hey, this episode, this month's Hashira is this theme. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. I hope they don't die. But I don't think we're going to, you know, we're getting their backstories. But I feel like Rengoku might be, I could be wrong. It feels like he's the only one where you're going to get more of his family into it than the rest of them, where maybe it's just them as the sole focus, or like, you know, Tengen as his wives and stuff. But otherwise, like, they're more like solo jobs and stuff. And of course, you know, the scene where he's got the sake and he's about to drink again, then he breaks down, and you're just like, my God. Yeah, no, that was fantastic. But,
and as a small note, Senjiro and Tanjiro meeting is important because Tanjiro lost his younger siblings as well.
Mhm.
So
That's very true.
he feels that connection of like, he just lost Rengoku. I know how that feels. He immediately kind of wants to just like comfort him in that way. He's always looking to do that, but it's like extra strong because of their last encounter. So I hope that gets developed further in the show in a nice way. So we'll see.
Definitely. And of course, you know, the sun breathing is a very interesting aspect there that we kind of get a little bit, and it's like, oh no, the Patriots are torn out. How could this have happened? And you're like, I mean, it's obvious who did it, but
Yeah.
I
do
like.
I was just gonna say, like, what I appreciate too. Sorry, Cameron, just cutting.
No,
you
go
off
for it. Go for it.
This is a page ripping and stuff. I think it's interesting too. The father getting his own character arc. So what I appreciate about Demon Slayer is like, yeah, you had the backstory of the characters like Rengoku, but then with Demon Slayer, what they do is they take the extra step of like, no, we're gonna do like an additional backstory of like the father or the brother. So I do appreciate with like the page being torn and everything like that. Further down the line, you have the father actually doing a character arc within himself, which is really cool. So sorry to cut you off, but I thought that was just interesting dynamic.
And when you say that, like, you also mean like when he writes Tanjiro, or I'm assuming, okay, yeah, because it was in the middle of his fight with Daki that he does that, right? That he writes to Tanjiro. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was really cool. And I do like anytime you meet a character, you're like, all right, it's gonna be this episode, or within like the next 4, we're gonna get some backstory of whoever, and you're just kind of like, it's not if, it's just when it's gonna happen. You just don't know. And like, you know, for like the upper 6 and everything else, you're like, it's gonna happen eventually. Oh, it's gonna be at the very end. Okay, that's where it's gonna be. But yeah, and then of course, you know, they train, they get super buff, which I thought was actually hilarious, seeing specifically Zenitsu still nervous as hell with abs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this doesn't match at all, but okay.
I was laughing how much like half the season he's just like unconscious but still speaking entire sentences.
So good.
100%. Oh yeah, love it. Love it.
Crazy. And then of course, you know, transitioning into the next one, but Tengen Uzui, you know, he appears and then he's just like, you know, I'm just taking these ladies, see you guys later. And then you're like, no, we'll go instead. And he's like, cool, all right, let me do a little bit of slap ass and then we're gonna get out of here, okay? And you're just like,
you had to bring that up.
Yeah, that was very interesting. But you know, it's fun seeing him with the personality, considering like every Hashira you meet in the meeting that they do, their little like bi-monthly meeting or whatever the hell, they're not too, like, you get a taste of how they are, but more so I guess like what their theme is. Like, you know, Tengen's like, oh, everything's flashy, and you're like, okay, or flamboyant, I can't remember which one he said more. But you know, in this first episode we see him, he's more vibrant, where, you know, he's shouting at everybody. Him and Inosuke have one of the weirder conversations of being gods and mountain kings and shit, and you're like, the fuck is going on? But how do you feel about Tengen, I guess, as a character, in terms of like how original he is? Because I don't feel like I've seen someone like him in another anime, but then again, I don't think I've watched as much as you guys. So
dude, I love this character. I love his whole thing. Is just like, we need to do this, but in the most flashy way possible, always. And I don't know, just like even his like kind of flashy Naruto style like headband thing that's like just covered in diamonds, it looks like, and I don't know, like also the idea that in one of the episodes we got I keep forgetting the name of the brother demon, Gyutaro. He like was saying like, oh, you're so skilled, you must have like such an easy life. And Tengen's like, yo, no, I had to work hard to get this good. Like, there are people that are just like inherently good. I had to work my ass off. And, you know, you get a little bit of his history as, you know, one of the last of his family alive, because just apparently being a ninja is just inherently deadly. I guess that makes sense. And then just when you get to see him actually fight and how he uses his like interesting, weird, like connected dual blades, like it is so flashy. And like I was losing my mind when he was fighting like Gyutaro or whatever his name is, and it's just like the way the camera was spinning around them and stuff just like exploding all around their place. And I was also curious from the start, like, what even is sound breathing?
Right.
And you get to see it. He uses a lot of explosions and stuff, and that's super cool. So just the entire time, I just thought this guy just the fact that he's over the top all the time is just so fun to watch, I thought.
No, definitely. And to your point too, because you're comparing it to other shows like Naruto, it's a very interesting take. It's a very interesting take of like regarding the life of a shinobi, right? Of a ninja. Where I know for Naruto, like other ninja themed, shows, usually it's like darker, right? Because you're on the front lines daily. Right. And so I think it's an interesting take for him, is that, to your point, because he's the last of his line, he's gonna want to live his life to the fullest. Because his other siblings or their family can't do that. So he's doing it for them. So yeah, that was an interesting take.
I like this character because, Mugen Train, as we talked about, was extremely painful. It was rough. The waterworks were happening for everyone. And he's the perfect kind of punctuation to start off this next arc, because he has such a nice, like, boisterous energy. So it's like this happy-go-lucky mentor character. This is a trope, but it isn't always played in this specific way. So it was nice to see, I think, Demon Slayer as a whole taking tropes and kind of twisting them or augmenting them in really nice ways. So I've always felt that horror is at the heart of Demon Slayer as an entire story. So having this character who always offsets that horror with his own just like always, crazy presentation and like positive attitude, even if it's like a weird one, is really nice and needed, and it doesn't feel misplaced either. It feels like it belongs. Mm-hmm. And for him, the main thing I felt besides that was that he was an incredible Hashira to do right after Rengoku, because Rengoku literally never shows fear at all. And in his entire time on screen, he's just this pillar that stands tall, inspires everyone around him because that's who he is. Where Tengen shows fear constantly. And that's actually intrinsic to him as a person, and it's kept him alive. Like the whole shinobi, you can feel the Naruto connection here, like you mentioned. And, in those stories, the characters are usually very like confident, and to see him being confident as kind of like a way to cover up the fact that he's always afraid and always surviving was just like a beautiful thing overall. Yeah,
definitely. And just making sure the shinobi stuff, like, was that a classic thing with the headbands? Like, that wasn't just like a Naruto thing? Is that like a ninja thing in general? I'm actually not
it's
sure.
More of like a pop culture thing. The headband alone kept the thing, like the cowl, from moving, and then eventually it just kind of became this motif to put armor on it, and then it kind of spun off from there.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. I was like, this didn't actually come from Naruto, right? This is like a thing that was
fact checking.
It's kind of a reference, though,
definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. He, to me, was a very interesting character just because, like you said with Rengoku, he was not one note, but he was so upbeat and continuously optimistic, even within death, where Tengen easily got annoyed and was not happy with anything of just like, yo, why do you guys always have to suck? Or everyone's weak if you're not a Hashira, like everyone, like you're given the Demon Slayer's bad name and whatnot. And then of course you definitely feel a difference because he has more to lose than Rengoku does. Like Rengoku is like, I'm going to keep everyone alive, but he's not attached to them, but it's just his creed that he lives by. And Tengen's like, oh, I sent 3 of my wives into this demon's den and I haven't heard from them. And I'm pretty much worried sick. I'm not going to tell you guys I am, pretty much like I'm acting, even says like at a certain point, I acted recklessly. I sent these guys in for their own deaths just so I could get them back. And I don't know what's going to happen here. I should just go solo. Then obviously that doesn't happen, but you kind of definitely get a lot more just, worrying uneasy features from him that are very interesting, just placing him out there a lot more, which was really cool. And then of course his wives are very interesting as well. In terms of personality, especially what was I can't remember if Suma was the crying one or the one with like the yellow, like the red, the hair in the front. I forget what was the crying one's name. It was I think I had it looked up. Makio.
An M. Yeah, Makio.
Yeah.
An M.
And she's just like, I'm not even supposed to be alive. I should be dead by now. And I'm like, what is happening? It felt like there was like a Zenitsu wife the whole time, which was
I love that, like, as Tengen is trying to give his like last words, she's just like
Oh my
crying
God. It was so
through them
good.
the entire time. He's just like,
So good.
he's like, I
So
guess
sad.
I won't get to do my last words. Oh
my
well.
tongue's becoming numb.
This
That
is
was
yeah, constant playing with tropes. Like
Love it.
he says it himself, and you don't mind it, and it's because the character set it up that way. You couldn't have done that with Rengoku, but you can do it with this guy, and it's just a nice like change of pace.
definitely.
I think it definitely showcases the humanity too, right? So, because to your point, Rengoku is like, I am this pillar, I am this figure, I am the head of my family, for I'm doing it on behalf of my father, my brother, what have you. But yeah, with Tengen, it's like completely different, where you show more humanity, you show more vulnerability, especially when he thought one of his wives was gonna get got, right? But then Zenitsu and Teju like help save the day, and he's like, thank you for that, like because for a second he's like, shit, I should have just listened to them and should have retired early, and like, goddamn, so I really appreciate just the vulnerability and like humanity. I feel like we kind of showed that a bit more with the other pillars, throughout the series once it develops more, which I'm excited to see how it's going to be shown in an animation way compared to the manga. But yeah, I really appreciate that. It's like the foil, it's a duality, right? And I just really appreciate the humanity of that. And again, those little tropes that you mentioned too, like it also helps just break a smile, just like, so it's not completely tension 24/7. I think by doing that, we relate and connect to the characters even on a deeper level. Because what if you were fucking bleeding out, right? And it's like, I can't even say some cool shit before I die. God damn, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, one shot that really stuck with me was when they finally did cut off both of the siblings' heads, and it's like Tengen's trying to warn Tanjiro that like, shit, like something's about to happen, like you need to get out of the way, and like Tanjiro's just trying to get his next breath, and like the look of like terror on Tengen's face of like, I don't know if I can save you this time.
It's real
like,
fear.
Yeah. Definitely. And also like looking at the flashbacks they have of him and his wives, like you get, oh, this is how my family was, and my brother was kind of a piece of shit, he didn't care who he let die to get what he needed done. And then you get like I think it was Hinetsu, her flashback of like, oh, we could retire after, not all of us could be there potentially. Next thing you know, Guitara's just like, I'm gonna kill you, and you're like, Jesus, bro.
Don't do this to me.
Yeah. Here we go again, because it's like, well, the last time we had flashbacks like this, Rengoku had a hole in his chest and an arm going through it, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, okay, here we go again.
Yeah.
And of course, this arc did a full 180 on us the entire time, because you're thinking like anywhere from 1 to 3 characters are going to die, some of them being characters you didn't think would die this early on, considering you just get stabbed in the freaking chest. But
dude, I laughed so hard the episode after Inosuke got stabbed in the back, because he's just like, I'm fine, what, I'm super flexible, I just flexed and moved my organs out of the way of the blade.
Everyone's like, oh, he's fine. The next episode again, he's like literally dead. Yeah. I love everyone for some reason, everyone's like, poison doesn't affect me. One episode later, where did this poison come from? It's killing me. It's like, what are you talking about, man? Jesus, it was something. And then of course, speaking of the poison, like you get into the siblings, and they are very interesting. And I do like, in this entire background a little bit, like I want to say the beginning and the end, they're like, oh, if you met an upper rank already, well, here's Akaza talking to Child, here's Akaza going to Infinity Castle, and you're just like, oh my god, this is gonna be fun when you eventually get. I just like that in the background where you're having the upper sixes the whole time, you're kind of getting more of a build up with Akaza, because you feel like that fight is probably going to be the biggest of all the upper ranks, at least for now, until I'm sure there's a 2 and a 1, so I'm assuming they'll be even crazier. But like the fact that he's the one that killed personally my favorite character, and then you're eventually going to get that buildup of Tanjiro being like, oh, here we are again, I'm not going to let you do what you did last time.
Right. From an emotional standpoint, regardless of the power level, that's going to be the most emotional confrontation. Yeah.
It's going to be insane when they meet each other again.
Definitely. Yeah. But as for Daki and Gitaro, they were there was something because they're supposed to be around. They said like 200 years or something in that area, and I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. The Orion, like she was like wore a bikini. I want to say.
Mhm.
She keeps coming back like every generation as a different Orion and doing the same cruel thing. And I remember the flashback. They're like, "Oh yeah, she cocks her head sideways, and then you pretty much die after something insane." And it was really cool the way they have that. Where I feel like I can't remember what franchise or series did that before, but it's just like a crazy thing of like, oh, I've been here the whole time. I never left and I outlive everyone, but I just keep playing the same role over and over and eat the beautiful people whenever I get the chance. And if you're not beautiful, I'm just gonna fucking throw you off a roof.
Sounds
Oh,
like a good life.
Pretty
You know?
much.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that
YOLO.
dark, but Eternals did that with Kingo.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
That was pretty funny.
That was yeah, my dad was me when I was playing all these Bollywood movies. Yeah.
Well, I do appreciate that kind of storyline because, you know, at the end of the day, you're as a third party, you know, viewing this, you're viewing the series, reading the series, you're like, all right, how humans, like, how dumb they are, like, can they actually pick up these are demons or something, you know, else, like, what's happening here? So I do appreciate this little tidbit of like, no, this is like a rumor and like a story within that specific bubble that people are realizing and they're aware of like something's not right. So I do appreciate that where it kind of just showcases, I guess, like the masses and the fact that like, no, they do understand something is amiss here. So I do appreciate that because at the end of the day, you're like, you know, it's a demon, but of course the regular folk, they're not going to know that. So I do appreciate it gives them a little more, I guess, life to them or, you know, the reality of the situation.
One thing I like about this series is just how they can make most of the bad people like somewhat sympathetic at the end. Like, I mean, this sibling couple was maybe not as like sympathetic as some of the Spider Family demons. Like when he cut off like the mother demon's head, I was like literally like, oh my god, he was so gentle about cutting her head off. But like you do kind of feel bad about like Yutaro at the end, where he's just like, he literally just had the misfortune of being born in like a bad place and being like seen as a burden his entire life, to the point where he had to make himself useful in some way. So he became a debt collector, and like apparently that's how he got good with the sickles. And like the only thing in his life that he ever cared for was his sister. So I understand how, like, you know, he comes home one night and she's like burned to almost a crisp and she's like barely alive. Like, when a demon comes to me, I might take that deal of like, yeah, you tell me that I can like save my sister and like all I have to do is kill more people that I already do anyway, sure, or whatever. I don't know. So definitely they were not completely irredeemable or completely redeemable or whatever, but you do still feel a little bit bad about them in the end, and like how, like, I understand how they got to that point. And Daki definitely was maybe more of a victim than Kitaro was, for sure.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm glad you touched on this, because this is something I noticed for the first time in this arc. You really hit it, where we're getting this backstory that Cameron was mentioning, where you're waiting for it. When's the backstory coming? And now we got it. And it's almost like a thing where, okay, we've been established as this is a storytelling device that we're going to get all the time. But instead of using it to fully redeem the characters, because you're completely right, they aren't. They're pretty terrible, or at least he is. It's now being used as a way to call out the evils of society. You know, and it's really cool because it sounds, again, cliche, but the demons are a reflection of the way that society is treating the downtrodden people. And then that ties into Muzan and how amazing he is as a manipulator. He's only grabbing people who are weak, who feel pain, because he wants to create a cycle of pain, because he knows he can control them through that. So he's like, these people have nothing. They have no power in life. I'll give them infinite power, but their minds are so weak from the pain they've endured, they'll do anything I say, and I'll always be in control. And it's not, they think they're getting a new raw deal. They're like, oh, perfect. I get to be a demon. I'm beautiful. I'm young. I'm immortal. But they're getting a worse deal than before, because now they're permanently ostracized from society. which was a really like they can't talk to people and learn from them. 2 seconds with Tanjiro teaches the two siblings more about each other than they had for 200 years.
Yep.
So I really appreciate that, you know, that backstory stuff is being used as a kind of commentary on the world that's being created now, not just the characters in the backstory. So.
Oh, definitely 100%. Because again, you know, it wasn't until he was like fighting Tanjiro and like everything like that where he realizes, oh wait, my sister's name isn't Daki, it's Ume.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so it gives some humanity to them.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, they're not completely redeemable because, you know, he had the scene of them being in hell. And even he's like, look, you were a victim of me, of the society. I'm going to keep doing my thing. You know, we're splitting. And she's like, no. She's like, I choose to be with you through hellfire, regardless of what it is.
Mhm.
I don't want to be alone. So I think it's really interesting too, where like to the point of they're not 100% redeemable, but it's interesting too, even at the end of the day, Daki still chooses to be with her brother through hell, regardless.
Yeah,
so I think
right.
that's very interesting too, of like, okay, you guys are still in it to win it till the end. But yeah, I like how that's portrayed though. The fact that he knows it, he knows he's a devil. He knows that he went through shit. He deserves to go through, you know, purgatory and shit. And he's like, you can make this choice. And yeah, so I think it's interesting that she chooses that at the end of the day too.
Yeah, I definitely felt like when that happens, because you do see like once he does turn and leave and you feel her like, you know, she's feeling horrible because he's leaving her, so she could be in a better life. But at the same time, you realize like because they were so inseparable, she doesn't know how she'd even have a better life because she doesn't know how life would be without him,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. Which is even, I thought that was probably even more tragic, where I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
you could literally go to heaven. And
Oh yeah,
almost
it's
a curse.
codependency. Oh yeah, it's codependency, which I think
Yeah.
is so interesting. Which is, you know, the big dichotomy, right, between Nezuko and Tanjiro and their relationship. He reflects of like this could have been us, and then Nezuko even was to the point of, you know, potentially crossing that line. So yeah, I think it's just there's so many layers there of just what could have been for them and their life, and you know the siblings, and yeah, it's just so much stuff to unravel. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, just again, that the codependency for good, which is Tanjiro and Nezuko, or for bad.
Mhm.
So
The spectrum for sure. I want to talk about Daki really quick because I think in a lot of people's minds she's going to get overshadowed by her brother as a character, but I really like her because she is finally a character who is portrayed as actually acting like a teenager. All the characters in the show are teenagers because that's your main target demographic, right?
yeah,
And that's a typical thing in shonen anime. But having this character who is like a brat, who's spoiled, who's used to getting her way, who has power. Like if a teenager could just do whatever they wanted, they would become this person. And it's a really nice reflection against the heroes who are like always selfless. They never do anything for their own gain. So having her as that villain just like instantly puts you at odds with her, but you're not always sure why. And then it kind of clicks that you're like, she's just a brat. She's crying that she got cut in half, you know? And I also liked because as soon as she shows up, you immediately realize that she's more powerful than Rui, the spider demon.
Yeah, she wrecks like an entire block in a second.
Yeah. They're having so much trouble with her. So the whole show is all about raising these stakes and creating power vacancies or like scaling based on fear and those kind of things. So I really thought she was an effective villain and could have probably stood on her own. So the addition of her brother was just like an even better part of that, like the don't worry, there's more kind of thing. And it was perfect hook basically.
I thought it was so interesting when her head got cut off and she's just like starts whining about it
because she knows she's not gonna die. It's great.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, interesting. She's like mentally like a child almost. Like she's been around for hundreds of years, but she's still at least emotionally a child. Like I thought that was really interesting.
And I had a couple things on that one. It reminded me a bit of something I haven't thought of in years, but do you guys remember that show? It was something about girls having their sweet 16s, and it was like a mega sized one.
The MTV show?
Throwback.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that's if one of them became a demon, I was like, oh, it's her right there.
They are
Like,
demons.
Oh, okay. So real quick, the only thing that I feel is missing from this season in terms of like Daki doing stuff, I so bad, like her biggest like dig at people most of the time was like, oh, you're so ugly, how dare you fight me who's so beautiful. I wanted Inosuke's like forehead to come off at some point and her to just be like, oh my god, you're beautiful, I might be fine with someone like you killing me or something like that. I don't know.
I'm rewatching it again with a couple other people that are still being introduced to it, but like which I'll actually talk about in a bit. Remember she has like her belt is also like a sub demon, like it has little like mouth and face and stuff. I do remember her saying like
her.
So like seeing through her, it does see Inosuke before because he's like without a mask, like I want to eat that one because his face is beautiful, save that one and like a few of the others, and then you could just eat the rest right now, but save those ones for me. So they just kind of they do it, but it's so underplayed compared to like if it did pop off and she's like, how is this possible, you're more beautiful than I am, and then he's like
that was also so funny to me when Tengen like was trying to pawn off the three main characters to the to different houses, and Inosuke, like someone snatches him up immediately and he's like, oh no, we saw immediately like underneath all that like horrible makeup that they're actually prettier without it. I thought it was so funny.
It's like, don't talk if they hear your voice.
Yeah, you have a really husky voice, just like don't say a word,
don't say anything. The other thing was definitely the power level. Daki and Gitaro, they're definitely different, where Daki, she's not as strong one-on-one as like Gitaro is. Like he obviously is more powerful in terms of like just sheer combat, but in terms of destruction power, she seems like she is a lot more capable because she just has more of like a covered radius, where Gitaro is more like, oh, I just got these sickles, I can handle you, but it's just gonna be like one-on-one until I personally explode. So that was very interesting the way they pulled that off, where like, you know, once she has her third eye open, or it wasn't even her third eye, I noticed like Gitaro loses one eye and then she gains one.
Right.
It's interesting. I think that was so that he could like help her like strategize in a fight.
He sees with her as well, which is what I guess she got better, and like all of a sudden now her belt sashes were like able to stretch pretty freaking far for sure. But that was really cool too. And then next was there anything else you guys wanted to say about them?
Well, so really quickly, it's interesting you mentioned the destructive power, because when I saw kind of like the first two phases of the destructive power, one where like the whole block was like decimated, and then when they self-implode at the end, how everything was decimated, honestly I kind of got chills and goosebumps, because I instantly thought of like a Nagasaki or Hiroshima, of just like the deafening silence and the fact that people were, you don't know, people were alive, people were calling out, and it's just, you just don't know what's happening and who's alive. And I don't know why, but I instantly thought of that kind of scenario and that experience, and like just how chilling it was. That was like something that jumped out at me personally.
No, I loved seeing the devastation on the street level throughout the season. Like one of the first times that Daki just like wrecked like an entire block. You know, you see people like on the streets, like with like their hands cut off and just going like, oh my God, what just happened? And like, it's horrifying.
Yeah. And it's interesting seeing that whole like, oh, well, society doesn't really know about the demons or the demon slayers. It's more like a secret thing, because like we're more of a feudal ideal, whereas everything else is modernizing. There's trains, there's electricity and whatnot. It's interesting, you know, going from the first season, it's like Tanjiro helps a guy, and the guy's like, oh shit, it's a demon, that's crazy, I can't believe they're real. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, that's it. And he probably doesn't talk about it because he'll think people are going to be assuming he's crazy. And
no one will ever believe me.
You kind of get that one by one until I want to say the Rengoku prelude episode, where that grandma's like, yo, I saw your dad fight and save me and whatnot. And that's more of like the first time you see someone has seen a demon before.
Right.
That's regular human. And then you get here, and it's like, well, they're not going to do anything crazy, right? They don't want anyone to know there's demons. And it's like, oh no, she's gonna pulverize everything. And everyone's like, I don't get what's happening. And the crazy part probably is like, when this is done, is everyone going to be like, oh, that was a demon? Or are they going to be like, well, that was crazy, I wonder what the hell it was. It was some fluke thing that happened, besides a few people that know it. Like the guy, was it the dude that lost his hand, was that the manager of one of the houses, or was that some other guy? I can't remember.
Oh, I think he might have been one of the managers. I can't remember.
Yeah, he might have been. Yeah, I'm trying to
Because he
think.
was the one like it was like the one from Zenitsu, the place Zenitsu was staying at, where if he was his wife was the
Yeah.
one that she threw off the roof in that like prelude
Mhm.
they showed.
Yeah.
So that was something for sure.
Well, I think really quickly, it is interesting too of like demons and folklore and just everything like that, and the destructive power of them. And usually, a lot of other anime series are related to this one in more of like dungeons and stuff. You compare a demon to like a calamity class. And honestly, it reminds me of this one anime series, completely unrelated, called How the Realist Hero like Saves the Kingdom. And it's an interesting scenario where this village on the coast, he's like, oh, you can't build a new village here. There's like a sea god that will like cause havoc. And for him, because he was like, transported from modern Japan to back in like this kingdom, he realizes, no, it's not a demon or anything. It's a tsunami. So to me, it's just really interesting of like comparing, like, say, with the entertainment district arc of like a calamity class of like an earthquake or like a fire and stuff like that, to that of like these two demons. And I think that's definitely showcases more like with the other series as it plays out, because usually you see kind of rumors of demons being, kind of picked off, like the mountain stuff, like the spider arc or the train. I think we kind of saw that there. And then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger of these demons effect, and like they actually are affecting society. So I think it's kind of interesting of just comparing it to just natural disasters and whatnot.
Definitely. It makes you think of that thing where if something happened that was real, but over time it becomes legend and then myth and like more of a story that's at a campfire or something. It's kind of like that idea. It's like I feel like the best description was like a Fellowship of the Ring, where it's like, oh, the ring, fell into the water, and history became legend became myth, and like all the things of like the stories were forgotten. And it's like that. It's interesting how that could probably happen, where potentially these people could be like, oh, this is another story to tell, and then eventually it will just be like, oh yeah, it was just some fire that occurred, some weird quake and fire, and that's it. So I do like that idea a lot. That's how things can unfold.
Yeah. And again, it goes just full circle to Daki and her urban legend and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that was such a good thing. Like that was very interesting, the way she like just says it, like, oh, when I was a little girl, my grandma told me she saw this woman, and now I'm seeing that woman again. Like that was really cool, especially because what was it, the first episode when Tengen says we're going to the entertainment district, and it shows just her like a silhouette with glowing eyes. That was really cool, because it does like feel more. I feel like you only get the horror from that, and then more so when you first get to the mountain with the spider family, like the real horror elements that you don't normally get that often. I mean, you get it, but you're more paying attention to the action than the horror, I guess you could say. Yeah. But of course, we have our four characters that we always follow. Tanjiro, Inosuke, Zenitsu, and Nezuko, and each one kind of has a different growth that you notice, some more than others, because Zenitsu's is pretty. I'd say Zenitsu's is pretty simple. It's just, hey, stay asleep more often, bro.
I love it. Like,
I mean, they stepped up. I mean, him and Nosuke, like, actually strategy based. Like, all right, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and Tanjiro, help back up. But like, I appreciate, like, especially Nosuke, usually like ride or die, like it's demons type of thing. So I appreciate like actually, okay, strategy behind everything. I did appreciate that with their growth overall for this arc.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious that Zenitsu, like, he doesn't learn new techniques. He just gets, I guess, better at the one technique. And so he's just like thunderclap and flash level 3, and he just goes like hyper speed. Oh, it was so funny.
He has also, what was it called, like god tier or something?
Something like that.
And he's like, I can only do 2, which is really, because it's like it's supposed to take out his legs, and isn't that how he breaks his legs, was just using that?
He's just flying through the air the whole time.
I do love that probably the whole time they're training, Zenitsu is getting at least physically stronger, but in terms of his like psyche, he can't still function fully, but he's retraining everything in his like weird inner security version, where it's his like sleep persona, and his sleep persona retains it all. And then all of a sudden when he comes out, he's like, I'm fully capable of being a tactician right now. I can like tell you guys like, oh, we need to back up, we need to do this. I'm fully aware of everything going on. Because before, when he does it, he just says like his technique, and then he's pretty much down and out. He doesn't really say anything else. So it's interesting seeing the growth of his sleep personality becoming more vocal and becoming more aware, even though Zenitsu really isn't. So it's just like there's honestly 2 Zenitsus, and there's
Right.
the one you don't want to ever see ever, the one that's like really
His inner core. That's a go.
I don't get the Zenitsu dislike so much. So, you know, full disclosure, he's my favorite character. He has the biggest change. He has the biggest arc out of the three characters in this one. And I love the fact that after they go do their separate ways solo missions, he comes back and he's not scared anymore. Like, he actually sees, he's like, Tanjiro stood up for us, he stood up for Rengoku. He takes that to heart and he learns from it, even if like he doesn't realize it, which I really like. And he's also the most human of the three. Tanjiro's
freaking
this,
out. Oh yeah, 100%.
right. Tanjiro's this idealized guy, like, which is fine for your main character. That's great. It works perfectly. Inosuke is the perfect loudmouth, brash, fun character
who's like insane.
Yeah, and you don't know what he's gonna do, so the chaos is always a good element. But
when he jumped his head into the ceiling to get his forehead back, I was just like, "What?"
I love it. Exactly. The fastest way to get to the course, right? That's Inosuke. And then Zenitsu, he has like real wants and desires. Like, he wants to be a human still, whereas the other two have just given up their humanity and they're like, I'm gonna be a demon slayer. Zenitsu's he's jealous of people. He learned how to play an instrument.
Yeah.
There's all these little elements to him that I really enjoy, and I think that confidence that he is getting is why, what you mentioned, Cameron, that's why he can speak in his sleep form. And what we're seeing is the two threads of his initial persona, who's aware of everything and has seen all these things, and then his sleep persona kind of eventually it's just kind of like this, right? And that's what this is implying, I feel, at least. So yeah, I love him every time he's on screen. His music's the best, his visuals are the best. Like, yeah, you know, it's incredible. Also, his whole like theme is anticipation, which I love. That it's his move is thunderclap and flash. You hear the thunder and you're waiting for the flash, and when the flash happens, it's always satisfying.
It is really.
That's his whole character. So I really like that element about him, and he's great.
Definitely.
And I agree with that, because I agree, like, he definitely has the biggest character development without spoiling it, obviously, like, to the fact where he becomes the peak of what he can be, what he can do, and he faces his own demons, pun intended, of being the best that he can. And yeah, I agree with you, because I remember like back even like Spider Arc in the mountains, where he was like clutching a tree and just like, I hate how I am right now, like I'm so miserable, but I'm so scared. And I agree, I think like, which is why he can probably come off as annoying of like to some people, of like, because his humanity is so real, of I'll be freaking the fuck out, I'm trying to survive, but like, you know. So yeah, I agree that his arc, especially in the future of the demons he will have to, like his inner demons and outer demons he'll be battling, I think it's definitely comes full circle. And I'm just, you know, I think for him, because his humanity is so out there compared to everyone else, I think he'll definitely get like the biggest arc, because plot twists are happening in the future. Not gonna be spoilers,
of course,
but you know, some good stuff's coming for him specifically. So
yeah, he's just cool.
I believe it. And he definitely, like, at least in this one, he's a lot more snappy, sarcastic, especially when it comes to Tengen, because he's just so shocked by, you have 3 wives, you piece of shit. And like, just there, before he gets traded off with his music playing, like, he realizes he's like the last one, and Tengen's just like, well, could you be even more useless than you are now? And they're just like back and forth, and him watching like Inosuke and Tengen at each other, he's just like, why are people humoring him? Like, why are people doing this, letting him get away with all this shit? It's definitely hilarious to watch. And I do agree. I think I'm just, the last thing in my head is, yo, I woke up and why are my legs broken? What the fuck happened?
I totally forgot about that.
I think that's why it's still in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, now it's classic Zenitsu. And I do have like more of, I guess, when we get to like the preview portion at the end of like not asking, but like kind of thinking of what could happen next with them and stuff, because there's like a character in his life I'm very curious to see if we will see or not, from a flashback that I remember seeing, but I'll talk about it later. But another character, of course, I don't know why I feel like I'm like, do I want to say Tanjiro first or Inosuke first? Because Inosuke, I felt like there was so much fun with him as a team player. Tanjiro, of course, sun breathing, and Nezuko, well, that's self-explanatory for Nezuko. But I guess like fucking Inosuke, like he did so much where he solidified of at least these four. He's probably my favorite one, just because there's still so much we don't know about him, considering his past. And each time, I feel like besides like Mugen Train, each arc you're like, we have a lot to learn, but I feel like he's gonna die. And it keeps happening. Like first his head is crushed by Spider Dad. And then this time he does amazing. He feels more aware than the other two when it comes to looking for the demon, when they're still like, she hasn't been discovered yet and they're just still looking for the wives. And Tanjiro is like, oh, I haven't seen anything. Are you sure you've seen something? And Zenitsu noticed only because he came face to face with her and then got wrapped up and stashed. But I never get to use that. It's like one of the few times I actually can.
I
So
can't
it's like
believe he said
Miles
that.
would love that. I know. But like Inosuke notices immediately. He's like, oh, she's in the ceiling. She was in this room. I can feel it. But like, his wearing women's clothing is like or wearing clothing in general is smothering him, which was hilarious. But
yeah, that was so funny.
He shows all of that, so feels like the biggest detective out of the three. He also, you get the fucking muscle mice that I was not ready for. It's like that thing where you're watching the intro and then you're like, I gotta rewind it for a second. What the fuck was that? And you're like, are those mice? When are mice gonna come in?
Yeah, tiny little Tengen headbands.
Yeah, and then you get muscled mice, which I thought was the funniest thing because they're also talking too, besides the crows. And I guess that didn't hit my head where I'm like, oh right, the crows can talk. I'm sure the mice can talk, even though they only know one word, and it's a very great word, though, of course. But afterwards, throughout the fight, he's like, hey, I'm not going to go headfirst into everything this time. We'll work together to fight Daki. And then, of course, he does the Palisade Bite chainsaw, which was amazing. Like, I know, of course, Tanjiro's doing sun breathing and stuff, but I was like watching that and I'm like, that is so genius. That is
I love there was
cool.
Finally a use for his serrated blades.
Yeah, because you're waiting for it and you're still like, why? Obviously they remind you of fangs. Why, like, he bashes them with rocks and stuff. It's the most like animalistic form of a blade. But getting through it and seeing how far he comes through all of it, and then just gets stabbed in the back, and it's heart-wrenching, especially just because it's like such a horrible cliffhanger.
Yeah, I love he's like running with her head. He's like, I got it. But like, all we have to do is keep the head away. And
yeah,
it's such a it's one of those things where this entire season, or at least I want to say after episode 5, it becomes a full, hey, the next 6 days are gonna suck a lot for you.
Oh man.
And it was like that nonstop. I've never watched a show like this where it was actually this bad of a cliffhanger. Like
literally every episode I was like, how do you end it there?
5 times in a row.
Let me tell you about a little show called Full Metal Alchemist.
Alchemist,
Okay, buddy.
yeah,
That's fair, yeah.
Back when that was coming out, I was like, you doing this to me? So that's for another time.
I wouldn't know. I would just binge the crap out. I was like, oh, cool, the show's here for me.
Brotherhood, yeah.
It's the best.
Anyway, I got that on Blu-ray. That's the only anime I own is Brotherhood. Just because it's so phenomenal.
If you're only gonna have one, that's probably a good one to go with.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, he does so much and then comes back and goes, oh yeah, no worries, I just moved my organs around, it's all good.
I love that he explains it. I love that. It's
that's
like,
the poison thing. Yeah,
I'm gonna take time out of the incredible runtime here to explain why I'm still here. By the way, I'm out the next episode.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I'm dead again.
I'm just like, wait, but the poison though, that's still a thing, right?
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Flex around the poison.
Yeah, God, he does so much, and it's so interesting because like, whereas Tanjiro already know everything. The only thing you're learning from Tanjiro is the sun breathing history. That's like the real backstory you're learning.
Even that though is like so intriguing. Like the fact that like I love this entire season. Tanjiro is just like, backing down is not an option. I'm exhausted. I'm on the brink of death. but if I don't at least keep trying, so many people are gonna die. And then like when his hair starts going Super Saiyan and his scar turns to fire, I was just like, whoa, what is happening?
Yeah, like
fair.
it's like him. There's so much mystery afoot there, just in terms of his lineage. Whereas Zenitsu, like you more or less kind of got it during the mountain arc, where Gramps is training him and shit. But like I said, like there's that one. I'll just say though, that one dude that's like, "Yo, I can't believe this guy's training you. You're a disgrace." And I'm like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" I bet he's some higher ranked demon slayer, probably, who's not a Hashira, but he's somewhere we're gonna meet him, and he's gonna be some bully. Where Zenitsu eventually will stand up to him in his awake form. But that's just a prediction that I have of like something
Ooh,
I'm
that'd be
waiting
super
for
cool to see.
personally. I don't
Who's
know
to
if the
say?
dude. I don't know if that they even gave the guy a name or anything yet. I have no idea. But for Inosuke, there's everything. You're like, all right, who's his mom? How did he get in this place? Where is he from? What
Yeah.
happened with animals? There's so much there that I want to know.
There is.
And
I do want to give you a heads up without spoiling it. Is that it's still somewhat a mystery. You're not gonna like get like 100% like the backstory like Tanjiro or even Zenitsu has. Like it's gonna be there's gonna be more revealing and more info, which is great in the future. But like I just as a disclaimer, I don't want to disappoint you. Of like
okay,
there is gonna be like still some mystery. Like some questions you just ask will be answered, but not all of them. So I just want to give you like clarity
Okay.
on that. But yeah, it's still good. It's still good. I promise.
gotcha. As long as you at least get who Mama is, that's like really the main. Watch that be not the thing you get. Be like, oh shit. But I'm very curious about that. That's like, at least in terms of all their backstories, that's probably the one I want to know the most. Because at least when you look at the sun breathing, I can already guess. I'm like, oh, Muzan stuff. He's afraid because he's handled it before and almost killed him once, and that's why he's afraid of it. And he tried to wipe it out, and blah blah blah. It feels like it's one thing that it's gonna be cool to unfold, but you can kind of already see what's gonna be the whole like origin and mystery. It's gonna be
Right.
something tragic.
The strings are there
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
for
The
you to
strings
pick
are
up.
there. Yeah, I think. Well, I
Yeah.
think it's interesting is that I think it's leading you because I actually had to reread like the last arc and like stuff like that just to refresh because I read it like a year ago when it first like finished or whatever. But I think that just to your point, Kamran, of like the whole lineage thing because you'll meet more pillars like the next season and like understanding more lineage when it comes to like some like all the different breeding techniques. What I find is interesting is I don't think it's much of a spoiler because Tanjiro actually says it in this arc is that.
Mhm.
Tanjiro actually isn't the chosen one. Like he's
Right.
like because he said his body is not made for water. His body kind of is made for the sun breathing, of course, but he can't handle it. So I think I
Yeah.
preach about Tanjiro is that like he knows he's not this chosen one because like we know. I think it's not much of a spoiler. Like one Hashira became a Hashira in like 2 months.
Yeah.
So, like, if anything-
Miss Boy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Miss. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if anything, like you have other people that are more stronger. So what I preach about the lineage with Tanjiro is that like yes, there are strings there, and yes, there's they're leading you somewhere, but it's not what you think if that makes sense. Like it's definitely still a twist, and it's very unique. Of like, oh, okay, so Tanjiro like this is his lineage compared to what you think it is. Like the obvious answer is not the answer you expect. If that makes sense.
It's funny that you say chosen one because I've heard that once before,
Mm-hmm.
and it's when Akaza says that to Rengoku.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just making me think of a lot of things right there. But considering who's potentially still alive, but I mean,
Fair. Oh, well, it's a
if
team
he
effort.
becomes a
No
demon
one's
slayer
like
or
a
not.
chosen one.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Team
But
effort
that's
here.
just an idea. It's just a thought. I'm like, well, why just such a
Yeah.
I also find it funny. It didn't occur to me until just now that like sun breathing might be so scary to Muzan because literally, what is the one weakness of demons? The sun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that it's like not fire breathing anymore because that was like it was too similar to flame. Where I do like that it's called sun more so, even though they're
Yeah.
very much. It definitely feels like flame is out of all. I guess what they say the core four was flame, water, wind, and
It's not sound. Was it sound? No, rock, right?
rock.
Stone,
Yeah, stone. It felt like flame was. I guess assuming because they're both fire, flame is the closest of them.
Mhm.
If anything, maybe it was the second of the four of like before those four, it was probably the first one to be, I guess, the sub class, but I'm just guessing. I don't know. I know. Yeah, I know that I'll probably find out later, but I'm just until then, considering it's be like 3 years probably until we get the next arc or something.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe
I'm
we'll get a
curious.
movie in the meantime.
I don't.
Well,
I don't
I'm
know.
actually curious. Like, I know for the peeps here who've like read the manga, because like there's two major arcs left, which you all know, right? Like it's the
Right.
Sword Village and then the Infinity Castle. So I'm curious for this if they're gonna do like, you know, how they kind of combine all these arcs into like 1 or 2 seasons, and especially with Infinity Castle, so you have like part 1 and part 2 of that. So I'm just curious if like joking about seasons, like how many seasons and how they're gonna like spread it out DBZ style, or just kind of like, all right, here we go, pack it all in.
Right. The movie was a really interesting thing. Like, I know you guys talked about it already, but from a business standpoint, making Mugen Train into a film was the best possible choice just from like a storytelling standpoint. But I don't think they expected it to make as much gangbusters dollars as it did.
Oh yeah.
And now
I've
that
never-
it has, right? It's like, how do you not try to replicate that again? Because it's only because I've been going to see luckily anime films are finally coming to US in the last like 5 years. So I've seen all the My Hero movies, all the DBZ films, and they've all been really awesome.
It's one of the
And
Broly ones.
it was incredible. Yeah. My Hero movies just keep going crazier and crazier each time, and they tie in a nice way. They're not like disregarded by the canon. They're actual canon. So I agree with you. I'm trying to figure out like,
I think Infinity Castle will be great for a movie because it's a two-parter.
like, do we just
It's a
end it?
two-parter.
We just end it on a, like, instead of getting a 45-minute episode, do we just stop it so everyone's like, and then you just like go to the theater, kids, and spend lots of money, and then you're good to go. So that's my, I'm just saying we'll probably see that. I think you're right. It's all about the money and the figure. Buy figures, guys, if you want Demon Slayer to continue and look this good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting to me. I've never seen an anime movie do as well as Mugen Train did in America. Like that was insane.
That
Yeah.
was
That's
better
fair,
than
besides the
American
classic
movies.
Miyazaki stuff, like the
Mhm.
classic and like DBZ.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like that blew up in a great way.
Yeah, and if you guys want to listen to us talk about the
Mhm.
first season in Mugen
Mhm.
Train, we did do it in our landmark 100th episode because we thought that was appropriate for our 100th episode. Also, I think like when it was in theaters, that was, theaters were opening right back up when it happened, and that was one of the first things I saw.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was beating out most other movies in terms of sales.
It beat Godzilla, Cameron.
That's
Oh.
Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh, okay.
It was the
movie-
same weekend. It was the same weekend. It
That
came
movie
out.
was
I mean, to be
disappointing.
fair,
That's
the Demon
okay.
Slayer
I was
movie
already
was much
disappointed.
Sorry,
better.
I had to attack him, Ron.
That's
I'm so
fine.
sorry.
No, it's okay. I didn't like that movie. It's hard. You know what's funny? That was my most anticipated movie of the year, and it didn't make my top 5
But
at
it's
all.
also probably the most disappointing of the year too.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
there you
it
go.
was.
Mugen Train. There you go. It wipes away
Yeah,
the sins of
It
everyone else.
was. I
Nice.
made that my number 2 movie of the year was Mugen Train.
Yeah.
For sure. It was too good. I mean, obviously number 1 was Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that's not
Actually, I have a question for you guys. So like I read because like Mugen Train is on Verve or like Crunchyroll, whatever.
Yeah.
So I actually watched the movie and then rewatched the episodic stuff. What is the actual difference? I'm trying to like psychoanalyze like
So
just added frame rates for stuff.
they
or, like, one or
they
two extra
added
lines?
A few
they
things.
added an hour of extra footage that's cut up and added to
Okay.
individual episodes.
snippets. Very
Yeah,
snippets.
Okay.
little weird
Oh.
snippets.
Okay,
And
I was wondering.
that's really it. And I
Okay.
have to say that I feel the show version kind of destroys the flow of that story.
It
And
knocks down the pacing a lot.
I don't want to
makes
get
sense.
too deep into it, but
Yeah.
there's some things that just don't need to be further expounded upon that they did. And so just my personal opinion. Yeah.
I showed the 2 people I'm showing this to going through it. I showed them the movie instead.
Yeah.
As I said, there wasn't really anything worth missing, but I did
It's way
notice
better.
because I watched before that I watched the arcs again just to see it through the episodic form. I think the thing that was most notable to me just really fast was when they go into their dreams and that one dude is going through Tanjiro
Mhm,
and the things lead him there, and in the movie you're just like he's already like, oh, they led me here, that's kind of crazy. In
Yeah.
the show it actually shows them
Yes.
finding
Yes.
him and then leading him there. So there is that like small I think that was the most like noticeable difference I saw, but otherwise like it didn't add anything at all.
Yeah.
Definitely Mugen Train is what I tell people to do is watch the Rengoku preview episode or prelude episode. Then if you can watch the Mugen Train arc intro, the animated intro, and then watch the movie because that intro is just really good.
With
And it's
the
another Lisa song.
Yes.
Yeah, which
good
I almost
call.
forgot. I didn't put it in a topic, but I did want to talk about the Aimer songs
Good.
in intro and outro at a certain point. I guess after all the characters are done. But yeah, no, yeah, that's what I've been doing though in terms of advising people how to watch it.
That's the way to do it.
Recipe. Yeah.
And who knows, it'll be a repeat for if they do another movie, right? For the final arc, you never know. So,
That's true. That's true.
It's true. It just won't have Rengoku though. It's not the same. But Tanjiro, you know, we were talking about him already, and the sun breathing. One thing about Tanjiro in this season was like, you know, it's funny because he, out of all the characters, whether he's injured or not, he's just like his biggest theme is I can't breathe, and he keeps going the entire fight. Like in the very beginning, the minute Daki like shoots him out of a building, and he's just like, oh shit, I can't move. Oh wait, no, it's just my body. It's like, did I do something wrong? No, my body's just registering that I was just thrown out of a building into a wall. Like, of course this is gonna hurt. And he's like, okay, cool, I can move again. But like he does the Hinakami Kagura the first time and is already like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then continuously still does more and more to where he's like, oh, well, now I can't even do it on its own. Let me merge it with water breathing and in order to save like a Hinatsuru. And then like from there you get the full sun, and then he turns into full anime, eyes glowing, fucking sun hair and shit.
Style. Yep.
But his just fortitude and perseverance was such a big growth spurt to see, and that was like his form of growth for sure, especially when he activates things that were dormant that he probably didn't even know about. He just like let it consume him, which, you know, worked out of course because he fucking cut off the head, but it was very interesting seeing how that happened for sure.
I like Tanjiro because it feels like right now, at least, his purpose, you know, he started out as the vessel for the viewer, someone who's learning the world. That's the perfect way to do it. All these kind of stories do that. But now it really feels like he is the ultimate juxtaposition for demons in general. It's always about him knowing he has the potential, and being a human is what's stopping him. And it's like this really kind of scary thing to think about. It's like, man, the moment he overcomes the limits of humanity, what is possible? And that's like a really cool way to build like a little anticipation for that whole thing going on. And again, I'm hitting this from the perspective of as if this is the only thing I've seen so far. And that's like just, it's needed in this. When all these characters are so powerful, your main character needs to have something that kind of grounds them, and that's it. The breathing, right? Breathing is everything to a demon slayer. And if he can't do it, it's like, man, a demon could just grow his lungs. And we keep seeing demon slayers getting tempted to overcome the human limits. And I love those moments. And it is very eerie because you wonder, when is it going to work, right? And obviously Rengoku's too strong, but you know, Gyutaro and Tanjiro talking to each other, there was this moment where like I took myself out of knowing anything and was like, man, what would happen right now if Tanjiro said yes to him? You know? So
yeah.
Well, I think on top of that too, like I guess for me now, like you mentioned, that the opposite effect of like, for me, knowing the future and the fact that like, you know, Tanjiro and everyone in the whole group will reach a peak at some point, and like it's at different levels, and the fact that like Rengoku didn't even reach that peak yet.
Right, that's a really good point.
And the fact, it's like crazy to think, like, you know, because we do get a little taste of it for the entertainment district of Tanjiro going DBZ style, and like you know, becoming one with the breeding, one with the style.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting of like, okay, he's tip of the iceberg, and it's just interesting to see everyone, all the Hashiras becoming there, you know, closer and closer. And, you know, again, without spoiling it, just seeing what the cost is of going past humanity. And yeah, to me, it's just so crazy, the fact that like Rengoku was this OP, but like still didn't reach his peak. Like, damn. But yeah, I think it's just really interesting, again, of like the humanity and pushing past it. And then again, what's the cost of that? So good or bad. Definitely.
For sure. That does make me think, because I'm like, I feel like with one of the upper moons, I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked, but not shocked if one of them was like, Yeah, I used to be a Hashira or a Demon Slayer. Like now that you mention that, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, we haven't seen a Demon Slayer that's like switched sides yet. And I'm like, is there one? Will we see one? And that is like an interesting thought in my head now, where I'm like, oh shit, that could be a thing, or it could not. It's a very or if one of them did turn, and I'm like, that would be so like
Right.
shocking considering their current power level already, and like they made it this far that they would, why would they like change anything? But it's just something to, I don't know, it's
Well,
just
even age, like to me, it's just really interesting. Like to your point, Haran, of like the future, the past, and lineage of the Demon Slayer corporation. The fact that like seeing Rengoku's dad, you're like, oh, people, or even Tanjiro's like master, like, oh, people who are old, like people can still survive like
yeah.
past a certain age. And so it's an interesting concept. Like obviously, yeah, the age for this show is younger kids, so it's going to be all teenagers and whatnot.
Right.
You kind of forget that, yeah, like Tengen's like what, like 19, some 20 maybe.
I think
Yeah.
he's supposed to be like 23, 21, 23.
Yeah, so it's just like really surreal, just the fact that whatever that cost is in the future of them gaining the strength of like, is there a future for them? Like, yeah, there's gonna be some people who are gonna step back from the front lines, but yeah, I think it's really interesting to your point of like, for Demon Slayers, like, are they gonna go to the bad side? Are they, there's some that just didn't want to continue that lineage, and like, what's the cost of that? So yeah, it's definitely interesting of like seeing, like, because again, I don't foresee a future, right? I just think it's like they're all just going to nuke each other. Like, who's to say, right?
Right.
Because you see people dying on both sides.
It's relentless, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's endless cycle. It's like, so yeah, it's really interesting to see like the really like tiny slivers of like hope per se, or just use tiny slivers of like the write-offs of like of Rengoku's like dad and stuff, where like, oh, you can survive past a certain age limit, or like stuff like that.
I feel like the one time I've seen, at least recently, that kind of like succumbing to that thought was actually, I don't know if you guys all watched, I've only watched the first like season, so the first two versions of JoJo, but like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. In the second, Joseph, the character from the first and second part, Strigo, he was one of the main like guys that helped him out, and then he changes sides and pretty much is like, oh, I want to be a vampire now so I could maintain my power forever. Like I definitely, I guess, see that as like the last time I've seen that kind of like, oh, I'm switching to the kind of corrupted, infected, whatever side that kind of feels I don't know what the word is, but it feels, just wrong. It doesn't feel right. It looks wrong. And imagining that for like, I don't know, you look at all the cool Hashira designs and how awesome they look, and I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I'd ever want to see one of them have a corrupted look, because it would just feel raw. I'd be like, oh,
you don't go, man, he'd look cooler.
Yeah, I don't know.
If only.
There's another point there, I think, to be made, Cameron, kind of tied to what you said, that I also like these temptation moments we've briefly seen, because it also feels like it's the demon trying to hold on to their humanity as well. Of like, I just need someone who can listen to me and understand my pain, whether or not they realize it. It's part of that, I think, and I
kind of like when Akazu was begging Rengoku.
Exactly. There's no one else he can fight, and Muzan will just kill him. So he's like,
yeah, he's like, I want to. This child gets angry at me.
There's nothing fun about fighting Muzan. Muzan does not give a crap about martial arts, right? He just wants to control things. So they're all looking for a little bit of humanity. Like, you got a sister, I've got a sister. We can be like, cool, like bro, sis, hangout buddies. Like, no, but maybe, you never know.
Yeah,
I like that. On that point too, like I know Tanjiro, we're setting him up with lineage and everything like that, of like he might not be like the chosen one, but I feel like he definitely is, in the aspect of him being the main character, of like, he's such a good boyo that, yeah, of course all the demons are going to question their humanity, because honestly at the end of the day, it's demons remembering their humanity.
Right.
So that's the whole thing of like, oh, Daki's name was actually Ume, and like all this type of stuff of like people just actually like forgetting, and like that's how they attain their enlightenment right before they die, is of course through a best boyo. But yes, I think it's interesting, especially in the future, when we see other demons and other pillars too, like questioning that and being tempted by that, and honestly finding their own enlightenment, and how do they, and what does that look like? Like there's a lot of, without spoiling it, there's a lot of interesting battles that come out in different like internal like perspectives, the reflection that the demons and pillars kind of do themselves, of just like how, like getting their own enlightenment. And it's just really crazy to think about, just like demons kind of reflecting on their own, like without best boy like involvement and stuff like that. And it's just, again, it's remembering their humanity, which is just crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like last character of the four, Nezuko, she, for the most part, she's in a box until she's not, and then all of a sudden, she defends Tanjiro. Daki knocks off one of her legs, pretty much nearly splits her in half, and then she's like, how'd she recover so fast? All of a sudden, because obviously we have like 3 forms of Nezuko. There's like normal Nezuko, there's like slightly more demon Nezuko, and then there's mini Nezuko, which is a fan favorite, of course. But then we got adult demon Nezuko with a horn, and you're like, the fuck just happened? Because everything grew, and you're just like, what the fuck? But
fan service,
apparently
I would like to point out that the author is a woman, so props to her for just knowing what works,
apparently.
I keep it classy.
But it was very interesting seeing her, she's still like, I'm defending my brother, I'm doing this for him, and then the minute blood gets spilled and there's no more little bamboo stick, she's like, oh shit, I'm a demon and I'm hungry.
Well, and like just seeing her enjoy like destroying
smile, holy
and just
shit.
Like smashing her skull in, like that was scary, because it's like you get to see like what would happen if Nezuko like actually succumbed and became like full demon.
And she's like upper rank style, because it's like, the whole thing is she never fed on anyone, but the amount she slept is supposed to be her sustenance, and she slept for so long that's pretty much made her, I guess, get that upper rank power, and all she needs is that, sibling emotion to push her forward to do what she needs to do. But the lack of control at the end and everything else, until, he sings his mom's song and she like loses it again. But I felt there were 2 things in it that were very much like, okay, now what? Was one, is she gonna talk then? Like, does she still need the bamboo stick? Should you just hear her talk? Would that be okay? And then 2 was the fact that, can we have that form, like if that form is that powerful, especially in a fight, how useful that is, especially considering now we're going to go to the other bigger 5 upper ranks. Like, is that going to be something we're going to see more of her of if she can control it? Because that would be a really cool thing, seeing her overcome and learn how to master that herself. Otherwise, like, she's more of like comedy relief when she's in her smaller forms and everything else, because she's just like, and you're like, oh, okay, ha 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 ha, head pat. Whereas now she's like formidable, and always felt like a fun, like she's a pro soccer player that could punt your head off, which I've always enjoyed. So that's like something that I'm just like, okay, what's next for her? Because that's kind of what I'm looking at, is speech and control, I guess.
Right.
But what'd you guys think, I guess, through it?
So I really like that moment. I actually had this in my notes about Daki. The reveal of Nezuko is like a really devastating moment, I think, because you're like, yes, and then you're like, no, because she almost kills Tanjiro. Like, this dude is already about to die, and the one thing that he's sworn to protect is going to fight him. So there's that immediate like, what's going to happen here? And then that beautiful moment of the mother's song, and the callbacks to how he always kind of has the spirits of his family within him, which is really nice. And it was great because you're like, wow, that was a really good ending to this arc. Daki got her head cut off. Tengen came in, saved the day. He was flashy like he said it was going to be. Nezuko got turned back into tiny Nezuko. She's happy. We're all good. And then Yutaro shows up, and you're like, oh my god, this is not good. This is very bad. You see the runtime, and there's like 5 minutes left, and you're like, okay, maybe we're gonna go to the next arc after this. It's like, no, we're not. It's not even close to being done.
We're still here. We never left.
Yeah. So I really like how the author and the directors play with that moment as like a fake out for the audience of like, I don't know how long the season's gonna go because you guys just did a Mugen Train cut down to a show. I didn't know how long it was gonna be. So that was really really cool to see. Yeah.
Definitely. Otherwise, I guess getting into more of the facets of the show itself, which just to hit it really fast, or not fast, but the intro and outro and the music, like holy shit. Because you're so used to Lisa. Lisa does amazing work with both the start and finish of the first season, and then she does I forget what the song is called in Mugen Train. But it's
the ending credit song.
Yeah, the pressing one.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh well, she's back one more time for the Mugen Train
Mhm.
arc, which that
Mhm.
first song, I'm like, dude, this is fucking good. But now we get Aimer, and I hope I say her name right, but like she does an amazing like song where in the beginning it's so upbeat, where we haven't had something that upbeat before. Everything's been like very much more dramatic. With Mugen Train, it's more actiony. This one is just like, yo, it's a celebration. You look at the animation, there's fireworks, it's the entertainment district. It feels like you're watching a New Year's party or something. And even when you're watching them fight like you're fighting Daki in the intro, you're having fun with it, and it just feels fun. You see mice on the roof running, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like there's so much going on there. And then you get to like the outro, and it's much more like, it's very beautiful. It's showing Daki's her band, like her
Mhm.
stuff is going around everywhere, and it's just much more, I don't know, it's just, yeah, it's just nice, it's beautiful. Like I don't know what else to describe it as. And you see them all sleeping and stuff, but everything there is done so well. And I don't think I noticed it as much until I watched the newest intro and outro to Attack on Titan, where when you start really listening to the lyrics, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, for fuck's, oh my god, they're really just saying that, okay.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you get so much more understanding, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, so is this like, you may not pay attention to all the lyrics to all the intros and outros, but it made you start to think about everything else then.
Right.
Like, wait, what have they been singing these songs this whole time?
Opening songs have a real power to them, and I love, it's a clear testament to Demon Slayer's direction, like, because the manga has its strengths, but anime director is really the person who like creates this feeling that you're getting from the show. And to be able to go, what do we show in the opening? How does that tantalize you? How does that create almost like a subliminal message? Like, this is a technique that anime have been using for decades now. And I feel like this was definitely one of the strongest I've ever seen, because it's like, we know Mugen Train was depressing. Let's go. Does that mean this ain't going to be depressing either? No, it doesn't. But you always have this song to come back to almost.
Yeah.
It's like this save point, which I watch it every time. I have to. Another thing I loved I was so happy when I heard it was Aimer, because she did some of the music for the Fate series, which UFO Table also animated. And while Fate is incomprehensible in its entirety, it is flashy. It's like Tengen is UFO Table. Like, them as a studio are embodied by this character. So it's so nice to have her kind of get called back. They obviously have a relationship there, and you're like, yes, more UFO Table, more Aimer, let's do it. Like, it's the perfect mix, and I'm very excited to see what who the next artist is going to be for the next season, for sure.
I agree with that. I mean, way back when I did my master's thesis on title animation, and more of like
Nice.
for movies though, and like it's like title sequences and just really like the taxonomy of that. So to me, with anime, of course, they're gonna have their own tropes, and it's like their own rules that they kind of go by themselves for anime. But I agree with you. It's just like, of course, obviously it's a preamble. It's supposed to set you up emotionally as an audience member of like what we're supposed to see for the season, things of that nature. And I always think it's really interesting too when it comes to shows that change up their theme songs like mid-season, because you're like, what is happening right now? So yeah, to me it's just the obvious stuff. It's like the notes, the what trying to express and what they're trying to communicate through visuals and audio and everything like that. But I agree with you that Demon Slayer is definitely a cut above the rest when it comes to how they go about that. And of course, end of the day, you're still trying to have credits shown, like roll on screen. That's what practically what they're supposed to showcase. But they do it in such a way where as an audience member, it's still part of the show. As you said,
Yeah.
it's still like a save point. It's a checkpoint of like reassessing, okay, like this is where I'm at emotionally before I go into whatever new episode's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the ending, of course, the ending song in the last 5 episodes felt horrible because you're like, no, you can't stop now. And then it was
Right.
actually more of a dreadful thing at a certain point, which was absolutely horrid, of course. But
like, can we talk about that? Because, like, sorry, Cameron, if you
no, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Like, sorry, it's so impactful, extra impactful when you get to the ending episode, because you know the ending song animation is Tanjiro running through the streets with the handmaidens of the Oiran and seeing the beautiful sashes everywhere, and then it's all this imagery of like what life could have been. You know, the audience is not prepared for what's about to happen, which is the total utter destruction of this entire place and the death of tons and tons of people. So there's always these like poignant moments where eventually you realize, oh, this thing that we're seeing here, this isn't the future. This is what should have happened, but will never come to pass. And again, like you said, Momo, that Demon Slayer is playing with your emotions in that way. And a lot of times ending songs are more of like, okay, get ready for the next one, you know, whether you're binging it or waiting next week. But this was more of a like, hey, start to think about the world a little more, which is kind of the whole show.
Decompression, 100%.
Right.
Like, you know, especially with big arcs and like, holy shit, did that just happen? Like the ending song is to like really kind of just like, yeah, just decompress and kind of be that transitional point between you as a viewer at the show and like you just walking out and just going on the rest of your life. Like, you know, sequences like that are always transitional points for the audience members are getting in or getting out. And yeah, I agree. It's just depending on what they're synced to. Yeah, it's just
this one has no chill. It's sad as hell, and I love
it. Nah, brah, nah.
God, yeah, no, it's something. I think too, like looking at these songs, when I work out and run and everything, my playlist used to it was just like, yo, it's rap, hip hop, rock, and I'm just listening to that, getting through it. And all of a sudden, just like 1 or 2 Attack on Titan songs came in, and then a couple Demon Slayers came in, and I'm like, all these all of a sudden anime intros are just pushing into
just wait until
playlist.
Wait until we get some My Hero in there. Cameron, you will literally once you go plus ultra.
Or just vibing, like, hey, don't judge me. I go to like Chobits, like new group song or something, Fukumura, you know. But I agree, it's like the tone, right? Of like what's a reflection of the show in itself, the underlying storyline. And Andreas, what you mentioned too, like as an audience member, we really should be kind of thinking and foreshadowing and like taking a step back, which I think is definitely going to showcase in the rest of Demon Slayer as a whole, of like really assessing what's to come and what they're trying to foreshadow and what's really happening or gonna happen.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think like at a point now I'm running and I'm like, all right, the Attack on Titan theme's playing. I need to get to this point before the music tones down and that German dude starts talking in the deep voice, and I'm just like, run faster before it gets there. It's a good time. Oh my god,
so good.
But next up, like the main reason also I wanted you two here is because you both read the manga, and I wanted to know like what were the biggest differences you noticed between reading the manga and then watching the show. Like how was that compared to like what did, I guess like for James and I, we don't read it, like what did we miss that maybe we would have seen if we read it instead?
I'm going to keep mine short because we could do a whole episode just about this. There was 2 things that stood out to me. First of all, when Gyutaro gets introduced, there's a couple frames where he talks about his name and he talks about his past before he even talks to the characters. And I really like that little inkling of like, by the way, this is a human. Prepare yourself for what you get, the hardship. You get the sense that he had a hard life even before he gets to talk to the characters. And it's a very interesting change to hide that completely from the audience in the anime. They do not ever mention it until that final episode. So I like that little change of, okay, let's hide some things. Let's really leave the emotional impact for when it's going to hit hard. But in the manga, the anticipation was nice. It was like, oh shoot, this kid has a sickle in his hand. He looks downtrodden. He's gonna mess these people up. Like, you're scared already of this person and you don't know anything about them. So that was a big one. And then the second one was Palisade Bite. Okay, so Palisade Bite is one of the most beautiful like frames from the manga. It is a 2-page spread of all 3 of them on the rooftop in this amazing perspective, and you just get to like follow the motion from one side of the page to the next, and then you see Inosuke in that awesome like pose, and you're like, oh my god, what a mind-blowing image. This image needs to be talked about in sequential art universities across the nation. Like, it's that good. You can break it down to its tiniest forms. Then they took that moment and made it like a 10-minute expertly crafted fight sequence that you don't know if he's actually going to do it. Like, I read it and I'm like, are they going to change this where like he's not successful? For a moment, they tricked me into thinking he might not actually get her head when it stops. Because in the manga, he just does it. And Tanjiro's like, good job, you did it, bro. And you're like, okay. That was sick. That was a great page. That was a great 3 pages I just read. Instead, it's 15 minutes of the anime, and you're just like, dude, they're blocking stuff. He's getting there. Is he going to actually get there? Oh my God, he might die. Gets her. He can't even cut her head. And then he starts, and then you're like, oh my God, that's so sick. Like, just elevating that moment of 2 pages that were already expertly crafted to one of my favorite moments, and I know someone else mentioned as well, I think Cameron. Amazing, beautiful. So like, that's really the big stuff from the manga that I just wanted to talk about without going crazy.
Yeah. I agree. I 100% agree with that. Like, I know it's hard because my comments are more saved for like the later arcs and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's interesting just to see the anecdotes of how they translate, even with like the funny, silly stuff, right?
Yeah.
Of like Rengoku, and he's like doing like haha, like a pose, like, oh, like big bro, or even like the mouse stuff, like it. But yeah, I'm always curious to see how they're gonna translate it and if it does work out or not. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like there's some, I watched the dubbed and the sub version for like the Rengoku moments and like the kitschy like fun stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, that translated like too well compared to like it on the page type of deal.
It was yeah.
But to your point though, Andres, like the stuff that did elevate, they 100% knocked it out of the park, like 100%. And again, it just elevated even more. I am curious, I think mainly for the later seasons of like, you know, the demons like backstories, how long or short they're gonna showcase it, because I know like usually it's 1 or 2 like pages, you know, and like that's it, and then it goes back to the present, where I know for the anime, you know, for dramatic effect, runtime, they kind of elongated a bit more, for good and for bad. You know, I love the series regardless. I think it's definitely, for the most part, stays true, and I'm really happy that a lot of shows these days are staying actually true to a lot of anime compared to like old school like FMA and stuff where it didn't, or even in like Inuyasha, like throwback
Berserk
stuff.
yeah
it was exactly
Full Metal Alchemist series because
thank God they did.
Yeah, and like even for me, like, so I'm such like a bad weeb where like I even read like the light novel. So like, for instance, I read like the anime, the manga, and the light novel for like reincarnation of a slime, like stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting of just to see, which makes sense. You do have to adapt it for the medium that you're showing for it, the format. But yeah, I do appreciate and give props to Demon Slayer, the fact that, you know, they translate it where they could, or when it comes to different medium format, and it works. And yeah, I'm definitely curious, especially the last arc, because there's just so much going on, and you're cutting like each panel, you're cutting to like different scenes. Like, where it's interesting for this one, it's kind of just a linear,
linear.
Linear.
Chronological.
My tea. Yeah, I need my coffee.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But yeah, basically that. So I'm just curious though for the later arcs how they're gonna translate that, and I'm so excited. But yeah, I agree. For the most part, they like do stay true to it, and if they don't, they elevate it. So
yeah, as like a final note, just in general about Demon Slayer, and I'm trying to find the pronunciation of the artist's name, because it's very difficult to say. Kyoyoharu Gotuge, I don't know if that's correct. I haven't heard it said in a long time, but the ability to show you very distinct panels of action. Like, a lot of people complain, oh, Demon Slayer's manga action is not as good as the show. And it's like, actually, the only reason the show is as good as it is is because those panels set up the action perfectly. It's like the storyboard for all the key moments that you need to know. There's another, just to kind of contrast My Hero Academia. I love the illustrations in My Hero, but I can't tell what's going on in the fights sometimes because he loves to just do crazy stuff and like add too much detail, whereas Demon Slayer is very reserved. Like the crazy stuff that you see in the show of like the flashy ninjutsu and the blade arts, it's just like one panel tiny in the corner with like some little slashes drawn, and we get like a crazy sequence in the show. But without that perfect kind of like, here's what you need to be showing the audience, the animators I think would have to try too hard to kind of interpret that. So it is nice to see it fleshed out, but it cannot be understated that the action is legible, which is very important in manga because you don't have a lot of space. So I'll say that like if you read the manga, go into it knowing that the characters are kind of the focus, not so much the fighting, which is why the show I think is working so well, because it's like perfect characters, perfect story. Now this studio is going to do what they do really well, which is fights. And now you've got the perfect like blend of the two together.
I agree with that. I think you actually make a great point. Because I actually just read the most recent chapter of My Hero, like this one that came out. And you're right. Like I know, you know, a lot of shit's going on, but huge, like the final arc, like fight scene. And I agree with you. It actually like, you know, trying to take place and trying to figure out, okay, what actually is happening. I know there's like a lot of shit going on. So I agree with you actually where Demon Slayer is very clean cut and it does really kind of have a perfect or great, fabulous setup for translation to animation. Cause like, I think of like high level, like manga stuff regarding like the Korean one, God of High School and stuff like that. Or that's purely violence, or like my favorite that finished Korean ones like Solo Leveling, or like other stuff where it's very clean cut and I cannot wait till this ever gets animated. I pray to God it does. But yeah, I agree with you. We're like how it was drawn specifically is how it translates. It will translate smoothly compared to My Hero, where you really do need the animation to see what is actually going on. So that's a good point.
Okay, interesting. God, I think I read manga once, and it was when I used to get the Shonen Jump magazines in the mail.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, Yu-Gi-Oh stabbed a guy in the hand with a knife.
I know.
Yu-Gi-Oh is good.
I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then I think the most exciting thing, I was like, I got the Yu-Gi-Oh card that came with it, and I was like 12 or something. But I never really got into it just because I'm more of a, not that I'm more of a, but I guess I'm just already so invested in comic books that it's hard to like split into another whole like country's worth of
100%. Oh, 100%.
stuff.
Yeah.
I did make an exception. I haven't read it yet, but I bought like the Nausicaa of the Wind, of the Valley of the Wind manga, which is like a beautiful collector's box. But that's gonna be at least the first one I read when I do get to read it.
This is for you, Cameron, and many other people. We didn't we're not getting paid by Viz for this, but the Viz app, you can barely see it. Oh, good job, app. Anyways, the Viz app on phones, it's on everything, and it's only like $2 a month or $3 a month, and it's got everything up to date. My Hero, One Piece, DB, literally anything you want. 90% of it is there, and it's properly translated. So the Viz app on your phone, like when you're at night, instead of going on TikTok, just reading manga, it's like, oh my God, there's so much good stuff out there. So I'd recommend giving it a shot. It's a really good way to get into manga, is having a phone, or the high quality screen now. It's worth it, I think.
I would advocate for that just because, and to me, it's a perfect like win-win scenario because you're still giving the proceeds where it belongs, where I'm a little guilty, where I do maybe other third-party stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so I agree that I think 100% if you just want to look into it, because to me, like for me, like so me and my fiance, we're big like manga readers, mainly like Korean, Japanese, like even light novel shit. So it's interesting too of like, okay, I like this specific archetype of like story, and then it's like, oh, what about these? So 100% agree, like do the Viz app because you're giving actually money to a good cause, and you're still getting like up-to-date stuff. 100%. Because again, don't worry about like not reading stuff. I'm just impatient. We're legit. I watched the first like 3 episodes of Demon Slayer. I'm like, what's gonna happen next?
I gotta read it all.
And then just binged it, and then I'm like a year later forget what's happening. So yeah, no worries, Kamran. You're good. You're good.
Cool. All right, excellent. I guess one of the last things we got here is kind of what was your, I guess it could be animation and story wise, but your favorite parts of this arc? Like what
I
was the
mean,
most animated portion? What was your favorite anything really?
I already
It?
mentioned it earlier, so that's kind of easy. But just like the scene where Uzui, or oh god, what's his name?
Tengen.
Tengen. He like gets back up after like literally one episode ends with like he's missing an arm. Inosuke
It's
is like
crazy.
stabbed in the back. Like everyone's like either dead or dying, it seems like. And then like Tanjiro like fends off the brother demon. Jesus, I'm so bad
Guitar?
with names. Yutaro like fends him off like as long as he can. Then like Tengen gets back up with one hand. He's just flipping his blades all over the place. And
It's in
just
his
like
mouth. Oh,
yeah,
So
oh my
good.
god. And then like yeah, I mentioned that like one shot of like Tengen and Gitaro just like going nuts at each other, and the camera somehow, I don't even know how you do this in an anime in like a supposedly 2D animation, but it's like rotating around them and like effects going all over the place, random stuff exploding, and I'm just like, what even is exploding? It was such a visual spectacle that I was just like, whoa, what's going on? It was very fun to watch that fight for sure. And yeah, like anytime that Daki just like let her sashes fly and just like buildings get torn to like dozens of pieces was just so like cool to see.
Definitely. I will say, I thought that was like it would have been great if Tengen just went, the hands are off now, let's get at this. And then just, normally you'd say gloves, but in this case, you could say,
Okay, Cameron.
Andreas loves it. He loves
yeah, that's a yeah. I was gonna, you mentioned that, James. This was such a unique fight for this show so far because we got to see combat in a urban area. Like all up to this point, combat has always been out in open field with Rengoku, which was great because you got to see everything, or in the mountain forest, which had all the cool like trees and the webs, and it was really neat. But now it's like buildings, like the stakes have been raised in that way of, yo, you demon slayers, you need to get better at your job because people like bad things are really happening here now that no one's going to ignore. I think Cameron mentioned this earlier of like the urban legends are going to start growing past this if things escalate to this level. So it's a nice kind of change of pace, just of pace and visuals. And I know Momo mentioned this, that I think the imagery of the destroyed city is not coincidental. It's 100% like on purpose, and it's always deeply tied into a lot of these pieces of media. That's again another conversation. There's many good books written about that, and I was surprised that they did it, but they did it in a way that was still meaningful. Like you felt it in your heart. That you're like, this is about more than these characters right now. For like a brief moment, it's a cultural identity sort of thing, So it was strong in that way for sure.
No, 100%. Like it's a real world impact. Like throwback to like, remember, I guess to me, like not related to anime, but like in general of like editing documentaries and stuff, you always, when it comes to like documentary, depending what the subject matter is or what have you always want to show like the broader sense of it. Like how is this like one issue that you're documenting and showcasing to these audiences affect the larger group as a whole? So to me, like, with that, we mentioned with, like the fact is like, holy shit, like this really affected people. And again, natural disaster. And to me, it was just, honestly, I got chills. Like it was just so crazy and just so surreal. And just, to me, I was kind of surprised in a great way when I was rewatching everything. Just again, like the music and the animation and how everything was synced up so perfectly. Because I know with some anime, of course, it's like, oh, great spatting style, but like, oh, a little bit issue on like a dialogue or, what have you, X, Y, and Z. So I feel like with this, there was a clear intention, which helped, of course, with the manga translation, everything like that. But I think it was a great, perfect storm of everything. And I really appreciate just the layers on top of it. And as a viewer, again, you really get sucked in, even if you're, regardless of what format you're watching it in, whether it's dub, sub, what have you, it's still an impactful, again, like feeling that you're experiencing, which I really appreciate.
Definitely. But did you guys have any specific scenes you guys wanted to do as well? I guess anything that stuck out to you more than anything else?
Zenitsu godlike speed is just one of the coolest
That
things
was
I've seen
amazing.
forever.
What?
Thank you. It's like how, you know, you show these characters fighting each other and they're just going at it, like you said, James, and it's a whirlwind of action. And you go, how can you possibly top this? And then when Zenitsu goes godlike speed, it's the simplicity of what you're seeing in the presentation that just like amplifies that moment even more. Of like, this dude doesn't need to be flashy. He just goes for the single strike. It's the essence of Bushido. It's the essence of samurai, and just to the next level. And it's been since Bleach that we've gotten cool sword play. Like Bleach was so good as far as swordplay goes, and then it's been gone for like 20 years. And I've been sitting here waiting for a good show to have cool samurai sword fights, and now we finally got them. And it's one of the best shows ever animated in the history of the medium. So that moment for me stood out. It's just like watch it on a TV. This is like a weird tech thing, but watch it on a TV that has auto contrast on, because a lot of times anime will automatically darken itself on
I've
bright
noticed that.
scenes. So yeah, so I was wondering about this myself for many years, and I looked it up a couple of years ago, and there's strict laws about epilepsy, like things that can cause epilepsy after the whole Pokemon nonsense that happened in the 90s.
That's right, Polygon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So because so many kids got messed up by that, they were like, okay, from now on, if you're going to do crazy stuff, you got to chill, you got to darken the screen so people don't get epilepsy, because it's just like an inherent thing that happens. So what's crazy is if you get a decent TV, you can there's a setting that allows you just to get rid of that, where it just auto brightens.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I've been watching so many shows again, like All Might's first fight in My Hero.
I noticed it's so bad in My Hero Academia,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
in the overhaul fight. I was
It's,
just like, what's
exactly.
going on? What?
It's because they do those brief flashes before the character like explodes into their new power, or the environment explodes. And it's like, oh my god. So tech tip: get a good TV, watch anime on it. Don't watch anything else. Who cares? And you're good to go.
Just that one. Yeah.
I'm still cracking up when I heard Polygon again, or Porygon.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
You have some personal experience there, Cameron?
No, maybe, I don't know. Just like, I just wanted to see Charizard one last time.
Oh no.
Definitely. No, but Andres, you do have a good point though when it comes to like Zenitsu specifically, of like having like one technique. And like honestly, I think that's very unique these days when it comes to, you have like all these skills and and like even like reminds me of just like this manga that I have, a Korean one called The World After the End, and basically it follows this one character like tower style, gotta fight your way into it, whatever, but it's unique where he only has one, not even a skill, it's just him, like he just does thrust, like as with a sword, that's all he does. And it's just really unique where you don't see a lot of characters like that, where they have one specific action and they just, like really improve it to a godlike level, aka Zenitsu's case. And I think it's really interesting where, again, he fights someone else, and it's like kind of like the duality of that, of like with Zenitsu's one track, kind of one fight scheme, can that pair up to someone else, and like how does that work out in the end, right? So yeah, I think it's really interesting for him you don't see a lot of characters like that, where it's like they have the one trick pony, but then it's still deep, it's still a process, it's still an undertaking for him to keep evolving that.
It also makes sense too, because he's the only one of the three main characters who had formal training his entire life, which is the funny part about him, because he's like so scared of everything, but he has all the skill that he just learned like the same way we read or write. Whereas Tanjiro's like, I don't know, man. I guess I'm super powerful. I don't know how to use it. Inosuke is just a wild animal.
I talk to animals.
Right. He kind of understands. He gets his powers, but he probably doesn't even know how he uses them. He just does it because he grew up that way. So I like that Zenitsu grabbing the learning that he has. Like, I think we've all experienced that moment in our own life, where like we learned something for a long time, didn't click, and then one day it clicks. And it's such a cool moment. So again, I really identify with that element of him.
It's also fun sometimes to see like how can a character like take their limitations and like go, how far can they go given those limitations?
Definitely. Momo, what was your top scene?
I think the Hiroshima and Nagasaki thing, honestly, I think because that just gave me chills. Because I'm like, no, they didn't, but no, they did. Like, oh, I see you. Because I forgot, like that whole like scene in the manga, just how again with the music, and even though it's kind of monochromatic, that shot it hits deeply. I didn't think it would hit as hard as it would have. But no, yeah, I think definitely that, and just I think it's just so interesting of the fight with Tanjiro and just knowing the fact that he's actually like a liability, and him realizing with everything, with all these quick flashes, all this stuff, is just him becoming a liability. And honestly, it's like the style in general. I always have a thing of how 3D is incorporated, like I have Mugen Train and stuff like that. Like there's certain elements that are like, okay, obviously they're saving time and doing 3Dingifying like this stuff. But I really think for Demon Slayer, I do appreciate where they're doing it correctly. And it still is seamless. And again, because it's part of the style as a whole, it's still just, again, a very unified, clean, fun, action-packed stuff. So I think just in general, I just really appreciate just all the elements and how they just sync up together in a seamless way. And get all the feels, man. Just all the feels.
It's powerful. It's powerful stuff.
Definitely. 100%. For sure. I think mine was when they do the flashback in the very beginning of Rengoku fighting Akaza, and just like go back to that, like that's all I really care about. That's it.
Just repeat.
Yeah, just give me the fire tornado again. That was
more Rengoku, please. If in 1 second.
Hey, dude, every single time they showed him, I was like, yes. But I think mine was probably, it had to be when all three are working together and they just shift their powers together to the point where the main focus for me was that I was just loving that Inosuke is just getting through there. And when he does do the Palisade bite, that was probably my favorite part.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Second to that was probably just when Nezuko's like, hey, check it out. I fucking destroyed her with my feet. And you're like, oh.
Her fight was good. This is a tough question, Cameron, because you're asking this question about this. This is the first season of any show I've ever watched where it's like, top 10 anime fights of all time are all in the one season of this one show, and it's like, guys, chill out. Like, but please don't. At the same, please just keep going, and inspire everyone else to be doing the same thing.
I think one of the things that I appreciated most about the Nezuko fight was just like, it's cool to see a character that is constantly, in my opinion, like underestimated, because she's usually like this cute short little girl that lives in a box, and like occasionally we've seen that she's strong, but we've never seen her this strong. And it's cool to see like Daki go like, oh, you're just this lowly demon, I'll just destroy you in 2 seconds, no problem. And then like the fear in Daki's eyes of like, oh no, this person is so much more powerful than I like give her credit for. Also, like the one shot of Nezuko just like chomping the bamboo thing, and it's like gone. That was literally the moment where it was like, oh shit, this stuff's going down.
The bamboo's off, the fight's going.
Here we go.
I'll say too, we didn't even say like because you don't even think about it. Back in Mugen Train, she burns anything demon related, and it's like the demon rope, and then this time it's the poison, and you're just like,
because it was technically demon blood, I guess.
So she could do all that. And it's funny too, because I watched a couple just to see the emotional reactions, but reaction videos, and they're like, oh, it's how's Tanjiro still alive? Oh, it must be the sun breathing eliminated the stuff. And it's like, no, it's Densuke. Like, she's the one.
Dude, like the look on Tengen's face when Nezuko like touches him and he bursts into flames. He's just like, oh, what?
Am I dying right now?
Makio's like, oh my
God. She isn't able to even get her.
So funny.
We're not ready to cremate him yet. Like,
I know, the small child just comes up, you're like Baby Yoda style. And it's like flames.
And then like the fires go out, and he's like, oh, I think I'm okay.
I feel great. But it was great. And then of course, right after it was done, they immediately were like, oh, hey, check out our little Swordsmith Village preview, and it shows I should have looked up their names, but I just didn't. You guys probably know it, of course, the Mist Hashira and the Love Hashira. And I assume that, obviously it's hard to say like, oh, what do you predict, because you two already know, but at least James and I can be like,
don't ask us. I'm not gonna say.
Definitely the Mist guy is one of the Hashira I'm most intrigued by, especially after Tengen's like flashback of like, this guy gained the rank of Hashira in like 2 months. And like the idea of someone who's like constantly just like literally foggy headed, it looks like all the time, like he's just kind of there, and just existing, but he's somehow under that, like unbelievably powerful or unexpectedly powerful is super interesting. I also want to know about the snake guy. That guy is weird.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah,
of.
boy.
Yeah, I guess
love
you
him.
did a good job.
He
Even
shows
though
up
no one else
at the
has
end
done
and he's
it.
like, oh well, I'm not gonna let you retire. Like, you're missing a hand, but like we need all the Hashira we
He's
can
such
get.
an asshole.
So sassy. He's sassy.
It's a realist, you know? Like,
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, if you think about it, of like, people actually retiring, it's like, are you able to do that? Or it's just like the guilty conscience of like taking your own life, which I know it's Tengen's whole spiel, right? They told the
Yeah.
wise, take your own life over others, yada yada.
Yeah.
And like that works out for him full circle. But yeah, it's just like the guilt of like you're one of the only handful of people, especially everyone getting, murdered recently, to help fight this force. And it's like, then you're gonna retire. So yeah, it's like a weird, it's a duality.
Yeah, I still love you. It's like, I guess I could commemorate you for, or applaud you for killing this demon that no one else has been able to kill. But it's fun, I guess. It's all right. It's just like, I love you because you're looking when he's saying all that. You see Tengen's face. It's just like the cartoon face of just like,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. It's like they've mentioned before that it's been like 100 years or some crap like that like no one has defeated one of the
Right.
the upper six. Like
Yeah.
the lower six has changed over the years, but like the upper six has been set for a long time.
Mhm.
So like the look on the and I don't remember his name, the head of the Demon Slayer guild, when he like somehow knows that it's happened and he's like, finally something has changed after so long. And like also interesting to know that he's like part of Muzan's like family line, like what's left of his human line is interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just
the
in between the
question of
blood coughs.
lineage. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
With like lineage definitely will be more apparent of like who's related to who's, because like it's interesting too, because you have situations in the future of like, like if Rengoku was alive, you could have a situation of like, oh, Sandro, his brother, could have been with him in the demon corpse, and like in
Right.
situations you will find situations like that of like, oh, there's actually like close relatives fighting together, like what, so it's definitely surreal to think about that, of like lineage and what does that mean when it comes to taking on the responsibility of like slaying demons and stuff like that. Because you can, again, in one night, in theory, you can just completely just axe out your whole line by just getting murdered by by some demons and shit. So it's interesting. I don't know, to me it's like, and it's know Japan, it's all about lineage and like making sure you pass on the baton to your legacy, right? But it's so interesting of this, of like you're finding the legacy that is the demons. I know, crazy shit, man, goes over my head, crazy stuff.
Definitely. I gotta say, like, I mean, things I'm expecting, at least in this arc. Of course, we're getting these two, and the other one being the love of Hashira. At least what I saw during the meeting, she seemed like the funniest one, potentially. Just like, she's like, oh my god, I love the blah,
it's
blah,
hilarious
blah,
how,
they're so
how
cute
quickly
or
she's
something.
flustered by stuff.
Yeah, and then like I forget who says what.
Oh, who is she super into? I totally forget. There's like one of the other Hashira that she's like super into when he
She was
showed up.
talking about all of them. I couldn't tell.
She was, but like I thought there was one that
maybe
I
a
can't
Snake
remember.
Boy.
There is one.
Was it the Snake Boy? I hope it was. Was it?
I'm not saying nothing, James.
Okay.
You got this. You got this, James.
Was it the
You
water
got this.
guy? Like it was someone who showed up later. Oh god.
I think it's either Snake Man or I think it was Snake Man. But
was it the asshole?
Which
who
one?
stabbed Nezuko?
Nah, I forget. God, that would have been horrible.
Stone guy? Was he Stone guy?
No, Stone Guy's Crying Man.
Oh right. Oh
Yeah.
he's also super interesting. They're all so interesting.
Yeah, no, but no, because I forget what part it was, but you just see her like everyone's just staring, and she's trying so hard not to laugh out loud. And I'm like, okay, so this is probably gonna be a character with a really big sense of humor. But just looking at her sword, I was like, is that a fucking ribbon? Like, what is that? So I'm imagining
I didn't even notice.
There's so much there that could be said. Like, I'm just very curious, just more about like her element is an emotion, and that's just like something hard to perceive. Where you look at everyone else, it's like some form of weather or like something like that, or
something
bugs.
Physical, something tangible, where hers is
yeah.
not.
Yeah, hers is like power of love, and you're like,
even mist is like, a version of water. I don't know where you get snake from, but
right.
I mean, there's like snake and bug, so it's like at least
that's
there's
true,
animalistic,
that's true.
just like Inosuke's nature. So it's more of a manifestation of like overall everything there. But like, it's just curious to see that one. Of course, Swordsmith Village, I assume, we're gonna see Mr. fucking angry face with the mask on that's always chasing Tanjiro. And seeing where the swords are forged and everything else, especially because his sword got nicked, so it's got to get repaired and everything else. But I imagine this is all just me guessing, and based that it's the village where the swords are forged, the demons would want to hit that and dealt a big blow. And I can imagine if there's 2 Hashira, maybe there's 1 or 2, at least maybe 2 upper ranks instead of just 1. And I would imagine, would they want to go ahead and throw Akaza in already? Or is that someone they want to save because there's still 2 below him? Would it be 4 and 5, or would it be like a 5 and 3? Because I assume no matter what, we're getting upper rank 5 in this, because why would you do the lowest after the highest instead?
Work your way up the list.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's gonna be work. Yeah.
But I wonder, would Akaza come early, or would it be upper rank 4 with 5, or is it just one of them? I imagine it's not 2 people coming out of one again, like this time where it was siblings popping out of each other. I assume it's 1 person this time. And then, of course, my other predictions potentially, since it's I assume if the last one's called Infinity Castle, it's in the fucking crazy castle. This would be where you potentially would meet Zenitsu's other pupil guy that was the Gramps training him, and Inosuke finding out about his past potentially. And then, of course, there's so many other characters you haven't really had interactions with. You're well, when is Konoe going to be more inclusive with it? When is other dude who is pissed off all the time or grabbed a child's head during final selection going to show up again too? Or is he just going to be in Infinity Castle? It's that, all those questions I'm having that I'm very curious about, just to see who else will pop in. I mean, obviously, I know it'll just be potentially those 2 Hashira, but just who else besides them will be there too is my main thing. And
I forgot, was it revealed already that Zenitsu's the other disciple of his? I didn't realize it was revealed already he had there was another disciple besides Zenitsu. I didn't realize
in his flashback it shows there's a guy that's
it's for a second.
Yeah, he's I can't believe he's wasting his time with you. You're wasting his time.
That's right. When his hair got dyed from shock and trauma.
Yeah, there's yeah, I would honestly love it
he became the lightning.
As great as Zenitsu masters that one, if that just at one point he goes breathing form 2, and you're
I'll lose my mind if that happens.
That would be the craziest, oh my god. But yeah, that's something. And also, of course, I want to see Sanjiro. I want to know more. I want to see more. I don't want that line to get severed. I don't want to see that flame line gone.
I'm expecting to see the sword master again, because Tanjiro fucked up his sword again.
Exactly.
I totally forgot about the scene in the beginning of the season when that guy showed up again and tried to kill Tanjiro, because you threw your sword at a demon and you lost it again
immediately. It wasn't even they had another job in between. This was his only.
And then Nosuke keeps chipping away at his swords and stuff. And I just love the fact low key for cosplaying and stuff. When Demon Slayer was at its peak, I'm I don't want to cosplay anyone else but the swordsmiths. 100%.
Yeah, he's great. He's great.
Yeah, I can imagine just them walking through the village and all the swordsmiths staring at Inosuke's swords what the fuck. But
that's still one of my favorite
of this bead. The audacity.
Yeah, this man.
That's still one of my favorite moments in the entire anime is when they get their swords back and he's oh yeah, it was quite a challenge to make dual blades. I've never done that before. Tell me how you like them if they're balanced correctly. He's smash, smash, smash. She's what are you doing?
I would like to point out as well that Bandai or Banpresto makes some pretty fun replicas of all the swords. They've got lights, they've got sound, they've got a stand. I'm might have Tengen swords in my cart waiting as we speak.
I don't know why I thought you were gonna say your car trunk and just waiting for the right time.
Don't worry about
I've waited for this moment.
I mean, I use nunchucks, so there's a good chance that I'll try to use them and hit my face with them. So yeah. Well,
I think it's very interesting too, though, of talking about swords. Of a lot of the other pillars don't use traditional swords. So you got Tengen, you got just it's very unique of more stuff that's gonna be revealed of how the other pillars utilize their weapons and what is their weapon of choice.
Right.
So I find that really interesting, especially in this kind of traditional Edo period of swords is like the thing to do, and it's like, okay, how are they going to branch off of that? So I think it's really interesting of utilizing that, like that kind of attack power.
Yeah,
definitely. But I
Pretty
think
shit.
that is all the time we have for this. We actually, dude, this is great. We went a little bit over 2 hours.
Yeah.
It was never a dull moment. A lot of conversation here. I'm glad I got you both on here. This is really fun. And yeah, eventually when I do get it, I will have a magnificent Rengoku statue, and I will show all of you his glory.
I think the
100%.
the only display that you could use for those, like for Tengen's swords, is like if they get the little muscle mouse holding it up.
Yes!
Oh my
Such a
god,
good
that'd be
idea.
fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
I
Yeah,
feel like
come
those will
on.
be everywhere.
I need to send you the link. I've been buying, because I know at our last meetup I did like the Shinobu like bathing suit. Now
Yes.
I have like the Giyu one like bathing suit.
Nice.
Like just
Nice.
hey, there's a Rengoku like little fire.
Is there
starter.
actually?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, send me that. We'll
I
definitely.
got you, boo.
We'll have match. It'll be great. It'll be great. Yeah.
It's cash.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That has been Sutro Side Talk. Before we talk about the normal stuff for the show, Andreas, are you still an enigma to everyone? Is there anything you want to share off or anything else? Okay, cool. Or are you the enigma? Are you a glaive?
I mean, mine is level 10 already, so yeah, let's do it.
Nice, excellent.
Dang.
We're getting there. Momo, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Insta of @_the Momo, and like I have a link tree like thing that links everything else from like TikToks to Facebook to whatevs. So yeah, so @_ the Momo.
Gotcha.
Got you.
You guys can catch all of her awesome textures of the day she does. It's a awesome daily thing. And of course, you can catch us on all podcast platforms and YouTube, as we are also video right now. Subscribe on whatever platform it is. If it's Apple Podcasts, give us the 5-star review. Spotify, rate us, and then YouTube, give us the like and subscribe. Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can go @Sutro Sidetalk. Check that out. Once again, TikTok eventually will come back once I get some other stuff done. But otherwise, Instagram is the main way to see whatever we're showing, promos or everything else. Twitter, it's a lot more just retweets and comments on things, whether it's trying to cause mischief or not among things. But right now, probably a lot of Snyder hashtags for the Oscars. We'll see. And then, of course, you can follow James on Twitter @InvaderJim124, and you can follow me on Twitter @GoGoComzilla, which is vastly different. That's just a lot of lizards and Godzilla and Bernie Sanders and shit. So
Toho era stuff.
Toho, yeah, a lot of Toho.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For
Yeah, that's been the show. Next week, we will see where we're at, because Witch Queen is taking a lot, and I at this point, because also the raid's coming up and I want to make sure I can include the raid in the talk. Yeah. I don't want to say it yet, but also because of all that, it's stopping me from getting through Horizon 2.
Same, yeah.
So
that's fair, yeah.
If we don't have either of those next week, most likely it'll be finally a catch-up week, because there's so many shows to talk about. I think, James, the main thing was probably Ted Lasso that we wanted to discuss for a while now. So we'll do that with some other shit, pile in there, a bunch of backup stuff, and then week after maybe some Destiny and Horizon 2 and whatnot. And then Cut of Steel, we'll be back soon. We got Peacemaker coming, and then shortly after that, the Batman. So we'll be talking about both of those. That'll be really exciting. Good time. Yeah. So all that's coming up soon, and then eventually we'll bring back Up to It, Down to It as well. So that's coming as well. Yeah. Until next week, guys, though, we will catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, snaps. Love you guys.